Good evening and welcome to the May 25th School Committee meeting. It is with heavy hearts tonight that we remember and mourn the lost lives from the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. We would like to begin the meeting with a moment of silence. Following our moment of silence, we'll move into the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us in a moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening. Our first item of business is the Wilmington Middle School representatives, and we have a small recognition for them. So David Dinan and Isabel Azea, please join us up front. We're anxious to hear what's been happening over at the middle school.
The end of the school year is rapidly approaching. For us 8th graders, it is bittersweet. It is an exciting time for us to be in middle school, but it is also the end of an era. As of today, we have officially ended MCAS testing for middle school. 8th graders took Session 2 of Science MCAS, marking the end of testing.
Last week was an incredible week for members of the middle school performing arts department. Students attended the Great East Music Festival, which was an amazing experience for all involved. After, we were rewarded with a fun-filled day at Six Flags. Tomorrow night, they will conclude with a high school and middle school chorus performance at the Wilmington High School Auditorium from 7 to 8:30.
On June 10th, students in Ms. DeStefano's Italian classes will be attending a trip to the North End for some of Italy's finest cuisine. It will be followed by a walking tour of the North End.
We are looking forward to the ending of our middle school experience with some old and new traditions. On June 15th, we will be celebrating our year with a backyard dance party here at the middle school from 6 to 9 p.m. Traditionally, 8th graders have celebrated this event with great enthusiasm, and it has positively marked the end of our time here. We are excited to bring this tradition back again.
On June 16th, we will take part in a new tradition, a moving on ceremony. This will take place at the Town Common at 6:30, and we look forward to officially moving on to our high school years.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. On behalf of the school committee, it has been such a pleasure to have you with us every so often to fill us in on all the middle school details. And it has been such a pleasure to get to know you and to hear from you at our meetings. We have I have a small presentation for you, but is there anything anyone else wants to say?
We just wish you the best of luck in your high school years. The best is yet to come.
Okay. That's the truth. All right, so I'm going to hand out these certificates, but let me read it first. It says, Certificate of Recognition and Appreciation. This certificate is proudly presented to Isabella Grace Zaya of Wilmington Middle School in recognition of her achievements in being an outstanding Wilmington Middle School student representative for the 21-22 school year to the Wilmington School Committee and community at large. And it's signed by Dr. Brand and it's signed by me. So we thank you very, very much. Let me hand this to you. And then there's a thank you card for you as well. Congratulations and thank you for your service.
You.
All right, so here. This certificate is proudly presented to David Dinan of Wilmington Middle School in recognition of his achievement in being an outstanding Wilmington Middle School student representative for the 21-22 school year to Wilmington School Committee and community at large, also signed by the same people. Thank you. We'll be seeing you again. All right. Our next item of business is the Wilmington Middle School, thank you, Wilmington Middle School Project 351 update and recognition. Ms. Allison Hall. Good evening.
Good evening. My good friends Bella and David took the first half of what I was going to say, but I do have the Project 351 update. First of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It is really a pleasure. In the end of March and beginning of April, Project 351 hosted a statewide clothing drive. All donations were sorted and sent to Cradles to Crayons, a nonprofit organization that gives new and gently used clothing to children in need. A combined total of more than 4,000 13-gallon bags were donated in all of Massachusetts. Wilmington collected a total of 81 13-gallon bags collected at the middle school, North Intermediate, and Shawshene Elementary schools, 7 times the average amount collected statewide. We also collected $150 in donations that the students in the Life Skills program used to purchase new clothing at local stores for the donations. They also worked with us to sort the donations. I would like to give a shout out to Educational Assistant Caitlin Versailles for her extremely generous donation of $100 to the clothing drive. Your kind heart is appreciated so much, and I thank you. Moving off the Project 351, in the end of March 24th, 25th, and 26th, the Wilmington Middle School Drama Club performed Beauty and the Beast to 3 sold-out audiences. Despite many of the cast and crew having a variety of illnesses, we still managed to put on a spectacular show, and we all miss it, and we really look forward to next year. Thank you very much again for allowing me to be here tonight. I wish everyone a wonderful evening and an even better week. Thank you.
Thanks, Ally. It has been a pleasure having you present and serve us in this way. We also have some recognition for you, and I think many of us were able to see you in Beauty and the Beast, and we're incredibly impressed and looking forward to all the work you'll do at the high school. So we thank you for being here. I'll read this and then I'll hand this to you. Certificate of Recognition and Appreciation. This certificate is proudly presented to Allison Elizabeth Hall of Wilmington Middle School in recognition of her leadership and service to the Wilmington community as the ambassador of the 351 Project for the 21-22 school year. So thank you for your service. Oh, sorry, did you want to see? That was the one time I didn't, and now you have something to say. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add that in addition to the wonderful production of Beauty and the Beast that I hope everyone had an opportunity to see, that the last weekend's performance of Chicago was also absolutely fantastic. And we have a lot of talented performers in Wilmington. And I'm proud of our middle school and high school theater departments and performing arts program. And everyone did a fantastic job.
Thank you, David. Are there any other comments from the school committee? See, when you move on too quickly, this is what happens. All right. I'm going to make a shift, if it's okay with the committee, because we have another student here from the high school. Zachary's here for an acceptance, so it's actually under approval of items by consensus, but I thought we could shift him up so that he could present to us now, if that's okay with you. All right, Zachary Weinstein, come on down. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Hello, Wilmington School Committee. My name is Zachary Weinstein. I'm here to present you with my Eagle Scout project for the Woburn Street Elementary School and to approve it as a donation. The project is a set of 30 heavy-duty embroidered recess bags, along with 3 extra unembroidered bags that will be replacing the current recess bags that the school uses. The reason I went with this project was because what my sister Jillian went through during her years in elementary school. She had to miss out on recess because of the fears of the COVID epidemic, the recess equipment being spread as being a vector. Essentially, this project is to mitigate problems like that and also to help with managing the equipment. As I know it's the school's plan to keep in place this recess bag protocol in the future. Each bag contains a corresponding room number and is heavy duty and weather tested. Each bag is full of recess equipment, a bottle of hand sanitizer, and and indoor recess games. So I can actually pass out this bag because I just want to show. But a full list of the bag's contents can be found on the sheet that's being passed out. All of the outdoor recess equipment is labeled. The indoor stuff is unlabeled because I understand some teachers want to label it with their own names. We're just keeping this that way the bags can stay with the room and the games can stay with the teachers. Everything is already completed. I am just seeking approval from the school board to drop the bags off at the school.
So that's what you want from us? Yeah. Okay. All right, so why don't you stay, well, are there any questions before we'll really shift things around and we'll do the acceptance if that's okay with everybody, just so that he can know for sure whether or not he can bring these bags over to Woburn Street. And I think we have some people here from Woburn Street as well, who I think are hoping that we will vote in favor of this donation.
I would like to only make a comment.
Sure.
Because the School Wellness Advisory Committee is credit has to be due to Ms. Stinson, who came up with that bag to promote physical wellness outside of the school hours, and who knew when that was created that we'd be entering a pandemic for 2 years. So to bring back and to replenish what was initially created is just an absolutely wonderful project, and I thank you very much for investing in these bags, because they are so instrumental in promoting wellness. Thank you so much.
Jay, any other questions or comments? Okay, ready? Okay. An acceptance of classroom recess bags in the value of $2,501. Is there a motion? Mr. Fennelly, a second. Mrs. Burns, all in favor? That is unanimous. The bags are yours to distribute.
The bags are ours. Thank you very much.
An excellent project. Really excellent, Zach. Thank you so much. But our students will be very happy over at the Woburn Street. As will the teachers, yeah. Are those the old recess bags? Can we see?
Quite an upgrade.
Wow, so let's put them side, Zach, can we put those side by side? Yeah, sure. We want to make sure everyone can see. I would say a definite upgrade.
Seems an upgrade.
Yes.
These bags also go out if we have a fire drill or some kind of evacuation.
Yep.
And knowing that so many more useful supplies can be carried in the back of the bag
It's unbelievable.
is just such a benefit to the school in so many ways. So
Yeah.
we appreciate Zach's project and congratulate him on his progress towards Eagle Scout.
It's incredible. Thank you very, very much. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for your service. We really do. We're grateful. All right. So we're moving right on. We're moving right on through. Our next item, we are have a summer reading program presentation. We're going to invite Miss Mia. My goodness, help me out here.
What, with pronunciation?
Yes, with the pronunciation.
I'm just gonna go over it. Parvianen.
Parviainen.
Okay.
I know, it's hard.
Close, we're close.
It's the
Parvianen.
triple vowels, extra vowels. In the middle.
Parviainen.
We're
Okay,
the
we
first
got it.
people
Well, I
for that.
pronounced.
I'm pretty sure I can spell it, so I think that's the.
I think I
That is
pronounced
better
Paul's
accomplishment.
name. Oh, yeah, of course, yes. I think I pronounced Paul's last name incorrectly for about 6 years.
Thank you
so-
so much.
All right, and so we are going to hear about the summer reading program, and then also we will do our acceptance of the 100 copies, because that's also under Mia, so
Thank
we'll
you.
get there in a minute.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for having me. The English department has done a lot of work this year to thoughtfully organize a summer reading program that takes into account where we are now. It takes into account feedback that we received from families, and it gives consideration to where we would like to go academically. So I'm here to share you some of the highlights of our plans for Summer Reading 2022. Summer reading programs are nearly universal for many good reasons. In their statement on independent reading, the National Council of Teachers of English declares, independent reading leads to an increased volume of reading. The more one reads, the better one reads. The more one reads, the more knowledge of words and language one acquires. The more one reads, the more fluent one becomes as a reader. The more one reads, the easier it becomes to sustain the mental effort necessary to comprehend complex texts. The more one reads, the more one learns about the people and happenings of our world. The Wilmington Public Schools English Department is well aware of these benefits. At the same time, we fully recognize that we've seen some significant changes to our educational landscape. In the spring of 2020, we had to adjust to connecting remotely with students. During the 20 through 21 school year, teachers and students adapted to learning with several changes through learning models and modes, both remotely and in person and through cohorts. We are grateful to have made it through a year of fully in-person learning for 21 through 22, even though there have been bumps in the road. And while we are optimistic about the new possibilities of the 22 through 23 school year, it did make sense to us to consult families in the community to see what they thought about summer reading to help us move forward. So the English department collaborated on a survey with administrators that was sent out to WPS families for students entering grades 6 through 12 for the 22 through 23 school year. We allowed about 2 weeks for responses. We asked questions about views on summer reading, different summer reading models, how students are spending their summer, and factors that affect the books that students choose. We received 117 distinct responses, and in the chart that you're looking at, in some cases, families have multiple children, so they indicated that. So of the 117, sometimes there are multiple children connected with that family. When we asked about overall views of summer reading, it was clear that families expect a summer reading program, but there are differences of view in the degree to which it should be required. Over 55% said summer reading should be encouraged but not required, while 39% said it should be required. Additionally, we saw that families overwhelmingly value students having choices and options for summer reading. Almost 48% favored students having a list from which to choose titles, and nearly 40% supported students making fully independent choices. In our departmental discussions, we also noted that families with younger readers often appreciate having recommended titles. So overall, you will see that in what we're going to put out for grades 6 through 12, we will be giving students choices of books because we see that families really do value those options. When we asked about students completing assignments connected to their summer reading, we found a range of views. This was reflected both in the immediate question and in qualitative feedback that we received from families. Some hold to the sentiment that summer reading should be fun and that assigning work would diminish that. And there are others who believe that required assignments motivate students to read and that without requirements, fewer students would read. So we've developed a summer reading program that gradually increases expectations for students grade by grade, taking into account their age and the level of the course they will be taking in the fall. We fully recognize there's no summer reading program that will fully satisfy everyone, but we did put a lot of thought into developing a program that balances these perspectives. When we asked families about summer reading tests, we found that overall there was little support for a summer reading test counting for a grade in the opening days of the school year. This is an issue that we have discussed and mulled over for the past several years. Given the survey results and our own discussions about summer reading assessments, we will not be using summer reading tests at the start of the next school year. However, we will provide students with opportunities to discuss their summer reading choices, receive feedback on summer reading work, and in some cases, work on short writing assignments. Our summer reading program for grades 6 through 8 will be recommended for all students. Each grade will have a list of recommended titles. Our grade 6 teachers are setting up a summer reading challenge. Students will be challenged to document their summer reading experience in Google Classroom, working towards an incentive at the start of the year. For example, they have a bingo type of sheet where it might say read under a tree or read a book that somebody gave to you. Students will be encouraged to document, perhaps through photos, that experience. The grade 6 ELA teachers will also be sharing and posting about their summer reading experience in the hopes of forming some early positive connections with students. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of jealous. I'm like, why didn't we think of that at the high school? That looks really fun. Maybe next year. They'll also be promoting a Barnes & Noble summer reading program where students in grades 1 through 6 can read and potentially earn a book as a prize. The grades 7 and 8 ELA teachers revised their summer reading list, and they've provided note-taking guides for students. The reading guides reflect the reading literature skills from the Mass Curriculum frameworks, so this is a good opportunity for students to reinforce skills that they are building throughout their ELA classes. All of our high school English classes will have required summer reading. All students will have choices of books and will have Google Classrooms set up to access documents. They can post questions, and most importantly for many of them, they can post their work as soon as it's done. They don't have to hang on to it until the end of August and potentially misplace papers. In addition to choosing a book, students entering our college prep classes will choose from different assignment options that include a traditional dialectical journal, a digital postcard that gives them some creative opportunities, blending images and writing, and potentially recording a video either as an individual or with a group of friends. Our honors classes will ask students to complete a dialectical journal that emphasizes certain literary analysis skills. Students will use those dialectical journals to complete a short writing assignment at the start of the year to serve as an early diagnostic. Our AP courses will also have assignments aligned to their curricula, including choices of books. A lot of work goes into producing a summer reading program. I really wish sometimes people saw how many parts and pieces go into it. The English department has worked really hard and thoughtfully and has really talked about the pros and cons of many of these plans that we have. We are very close to having this ready to go public soon. We're just finalizing some details, checking links, making sure that all the people who need to know about it will have the information. Our plan is to make the summer reading document public on May 31st. Teachers will share the information with their students, while administrators will be asked to relay information to families. And we sincerely hope that students will discover some great new books and will let us know what they thought when they come back in the fall.
That's great. Thank you very, very much for that. We're excited to see the book lists and see what happens next. Do you also want to tell us a little bit about the 100 copies of Call Us What We Carry?
Sure.
Thank you.
The National Council of Teachers of English is our professional organization, and every now and then I get emails from them, and they sent one out. April was National Poetry Month, and they said we're having a drawing every day for the month of April. We're giving away 100 copies of this book, and I entered the drawing on a lark. It was like all of 5 minutes. And then many days later, I happened to check my email. I was like, oh my word. And one of my students was like, what happened? I'm like, I just won 100 books. And they're like, that's so cool. I'm like, I know. So 3 days later, 5 massive boxes of books showed up. We are looking forward to reading the books thoughtfully and discussing where they would best fit in the curriculum. I have not yet read the book. It's on my to-be-read pile, which is out of control. It's the curse of all English teachers, but we are looking forward to hopefully being allowed to accept the books, read them, and talk about the best placement in our curriculum.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for applying for that. Mrs. Burns?
Just a quick question. What is the book about? I'm just curious because with regards to the contest itself and the giveaway, where's this particular book?
So Amanda Gorman is right now a nationally recognized poet. She read poetry at one of the recent presidential inaugurations. I believe she was the United States Youth Poet Laureate. So she has an entire book of poetry. I did skim it because I was curious, and it's largely free verse poetry. There are a lot of really cool formatting techniques that she uses. I'm looking forward to reading it more in depth.
Right.
I've read some of her poems, but not the whole book.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just wanted to thank you in the English department for the time and care that was put into the summer care, the considerations for the summer reading program, because it is something that's both so important but can be so delicate that it's so important that they read, except if you limit their options too much, then they kind of lose the joy of being able to choose for themselves, and that's a really important thing in encouraging and inculcating the love of reading, is that it has to be something that students take on themselves at a certain point. And I think that a really nice balance was struck between having options, but then also having suggestions and having the list, and between the requirements. I just wanted to say thanks for how thoughtfully this was put together.
Thanks, David. Yeah, we would agree. I think when I got the survey, I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I mean, it was such a great survey, and to ask families what they were thinking, and from their perspective, how their children, some of us for years now, have sort of viewed summer reading. I think it was just a great opportunity, and also hopefully to get parents also engaged in this and to say, hey, we participated in part of this decision, and so now we're going to make sure that we're encouraging summer reading. So I was really delighted that you went that route, so thank you to you and your team.
And parents are certainly welcome to join in. I have had in the past students who have talked about how parents have decided to read alongside their student, so I highly recommend it. Go for it. You'll have some wonderful conversations. We do have linked discussion questions. They're meant for that, so that could be a great opportunity for parents to collaborate with their students.
That's great. Very helpful. Thank you so much. Before you go, can we do a motion for the acceptance of 100 copies? Mrs. Plowman, a second. Mr. Smaha, all in favor? It's unanimous, so
Thank you so much.
get reading and spread them out, and
I know.
thank you very, very much. And thanks for being here tonight. It's really nice to see you. All right. You're up next if you want.
Me?
Yes, I think so. Well, we put it all under summer programming.
Yes, we did. And it's not on the agenda specifically to talk about the elementary summer reading, but I did want to not neglect that part of the conversation. We will continue with our elementary summer reading program as we have each year, and it's optional, and we'll be getting, it'll be just a refreshed version of what we've done annually, which seems to be well embraced by our community, so we will be communicating that out, partnering with the library and communicating that out to families at the end of the school year as well.
Thank you.
And so, in addition to summer reading, I wanted to speak this evening a little bit about just an update around our summer school program. So first, we will be running our secondary summer school program this year, as we have in the past. The program will run, we have hired two directors, co-directors, Mr. Matthew Hackett and Mr. Michael Jones. They are the co-directors this summer, overseeing grades 6 through 12 secondary summer school program. They've been working diligently every day. There's new documents being shared with me and updates, and they've been really working hard to pull all of those moving parts together to basically, build a mini school for the summer. They're hiring staff as we speak and really assessing needs of students. So we will be running that program. We've modified our times a little bit from last year, but it will run 5 weeks, for the high school, starting the end of June and run through the end of July. The middle school starts a week later, but ends at the same time. They will run 2 sessions, one in the morning, 7:45 to 9:45, and then session 2 will run from 10 to 12. So everybody will be out by noon. Last year we went through the afternoon, which was a little more of a struggle. We took Fridays off, but went through the afternoon, and it made for a long day. So we're running shorter days, but 5 days a week. So that program is for credit recovery at this high school level, and remediation, and for students who are at risk of failure at the middle school for any courses. In addition to running that type of program, new this year, we are launching, and you probably have already seen some communication go out about it, but launching an enrichment program. So we're starting small, but we're excited that we already have some interest in, and some families in registering their students for this summer. So we'll be offering 4 different options this summer, and they will be held here at the high school. There's a flyer that is included that went out with the letter, as well as in the packets this evening. But we'll be offering a CAD course, computer-aided design, intro to robotics, creative writing workshop, and also summer book club. So, which would be a great opportunity for supporting students in their summer reading if they wanted to participate in this in more of a guided session with peers. So these are 4 new options that we're hoping to really try to launch this program and then build as we go over time. So we're excited to be able to try and offer that. It'll be for students entering grades 7 through 12. We're also excited about the opportunity to try and continue to bridge that gap between middle school and high school, giving students opportunities who are in the middle school to come to the high school and get a feel for what things will be like, meet some of the staff. So we're excited about that opportunity.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm sure there are probably some questions. Mr. Turner?
The comment, I think the new enrichment program is fantastic. I was really excited when I saw that come out, and the fact that there's several different options that can appeal to different kids and get them excited. And as a bridge, that type of thing makes a great deal of sense. Having it here as opposed to anywhere else in the district makes great sense for the 7th and 8th graders, for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And a huge thanks to Mr. Hackett, Mr. Jones, because they really took it, ran with this and said, can we try this? Can we step up and make it, see what we can find for teachers and interest? And I said, let's do it. Let's see what we can figure out. So
That's great.
thank you to them.
Mr. Smaha?
I echo what Mr. Turner said as well. One question that I had when I look at the cost of any of these, is there, if a family is unable to pay that, how do they go about signing up? Do they contact Mr. Hackett, or what's the process that a family would go through?
We don't have an official policy in place around that yet, or protocol in place, but they should certainly reach out to one of the directors if there's a financial concern, and we can see what we can do to support that.
Can I have a follow-up to that? It says $250 per course, and then I see it broken down into the sessions. Am I assuming that there's one course in one, like from 7:45 to 9:45, and then there's another course? Am I
For the summer school
the middle school
program?
summer session?
So yes, they can, session A, they could be, if a student needed to take a math course and an ELA course, they would pay per course.
Okay. And is that the same price for the enrichment program?
Enrichment program is built differently. It's based on sort of, the enrichment program is built to be self-sustaining, as this is as well. But actually, it's a little bit, I think the summer program, summer school itself is a little bit less because we budget for the co-directors or I budgeted for that so that those costs don't have to come out of the tuition. However, given that the enrichment program is new, the cost of those programs is built around what we anticipate the expenses will be for the materials and the cost of the staff to support those programs.
The CAD, the book club, and the creative writing are 115, and the robotics is 190.
Okay.
It's listed on the flyer.
I'm just a little concerned about the cost per course, and that there's the sentence right before that says 30 hours of attendance is required. I'm just worried about how families will perceive that if they're being, obviously students who are being recommended for this are at risk, right, of non-promotion, but there's a choice there.
Sure.
Right?
For summer school, yes.
Yeah.
We've traditionally charged tuition. Summer
Yeah.
school has been a tuition-based program. We waived it last year due to the funding, but that has been pretty consistent with how it's been, the charges in the past.
Okay. And then just to Jay's point, obviously, if there were any issues, then we would make sure that they would not be turned away. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you for that update. We appreciate it. All right, our next item of business is public comment. Mr. Ragsdale.
One person signed up for public comment tonight, Jeffrey Cohen.
Sorry, I was here. I was looking on this page here.
Good evening, Jeffrey Cohen, 18 Cobalt Street in Wilmington. This committee continues to pursue their twisted agenda with blinders on, as evidenced by most recently by inappropriate posters that are on the walls still throughout this building. It has become abundantly clear that you are on a mission to indoctrinate impressionable children. Parents do not want their children exposed to gender and race in a school setting, yet this committee is determined to make that happen. You have no business discussing family issues in a school setting. What will it take for this committee to focus solely on academics and nothing else? The attrition in Wilmington is already terrible, and you should expect it to rapidly accelerate when parents find out about the gender ideology that's being introduced in schools. I took the opportunity to print out a couple of the quote-unquote 15 tips for peace, inappropriate posters plastered all over the walls still of this school. Number 4 states, if I can grab it, use a person's correct pronouns. If you're not sure, ask them. What is that supposed to mean? Stop bastardizing the English language by injecting inappropriate statements and contents on posters in our schools. I suggest changing this poster to say, remember that race and gender discussions belong at home, not in a school setting. Instead of a poster that says, be aware, of how privileged you are, more than others, you should change that to, be aware of how fortunate you are to live in a great country like America, the land of the free. Instead of encouraging students to become activists by stating signing petitions is an important action towards change, you should change that to activism does not belong in a school setting. Instead of pushing a stance against so-called heterosexual normativity, you should change that to there are only two sexes, male and female. Enough is enough with this race and gender garbage in schools. You have no right to teach race and gender relations to impressionable children. You do not have our consent to teach this rubbish to students. You do not have our permission to teach anything other than core subjects in school. How long will it take you to understand that? Many states have banned this inappropriate content, yet Massachusetts not only teaches it, but they also condone it. Expect a large exodus from Wilmington schools, and it's directly tied to the inappropriate content that includes gender, race, and so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion being promoted in what used to be an educational setting. This woke ideology in government schools must stop. You do not have our consent to indoctrinate children. You are poisoning them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who would like to make a public comment? Please come forward. Just give your name and name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Kim Stevenson. My address is 280 Woburn Street. I was not planning on making a comment, but I would just like to say thank you for committing to education that includes inclusive and diverse subjects, and for committing to improving the education of students, teaching them sociology and more worldly views, and coming into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? The committee also received 2 additional written comments, which were distributed to us and we read before the meeting.
Thank you. All right, we have approval of items by consensus, approval of minutes, May 11th, 2022. Thank you, Mrs. Plowman, seconded by Mr. Fennelly. All in favor? We have warrants, that is unanimous, I think. Was it unanimous? G3940, R4041. Melissa, thank you. R4041, L91, 92, 93, 94, 95, and FS 65, 66, 69. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Smaha, seconded by Mrs. Burns. All in favor? It's unanimous. Payroll ending 5/25/2022. Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mr. Ragsdale. All in favor? It's unanimous. We have SPED 38. Thank you, Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mr. Turner. All in favor? 1 abstention. Thank you. Brings us to our superintendent's report. Dr. Brandt.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. There are 4 items tonight that are included under the superintendent's report, and for each there is accompanying information within the packet, and I will go in order this evening. First, item 8A, Superintendent Evaluation Progress Report and Evidence. Within the contents of your packet for this week, I've included 2 items as you come to this time in the school year in which you are certainly asked and required to conduct an evaluation of myself as your superintendent of schools. The information that's provided in the packet provides you with additional information on 2 things. One, the information that with Ms. Ingersoll's help has tried to very much be compiled in a way that hopefully is user-friendly and accessible and aligns with the model evaluation system in the state of Massachusetts. The evaluation system is established by the Department of Education, or DESE, and it provides the context or framework in which superintendents and school administrators are evaluated throughout the state, and it's quite similar to the evaluative system that is used for teachers. There are 2 components to this. One, the overall evaluation rubric that I know you've received in previous correspondence around superintendent evaluation. And as if you've had a chance to take a look at that, the effort has been to try and provide you with examples of evidence that align with the 4 standards and the number of indicators that are included within that rubric. And so hopefully that is a little bit more user-friendly document to sift through a number of different examples that, at least from my perspective, align with those indicators. The other, of course, is the performance goals. And as the committee is aware, each year I bring forward to you a number of performance goals that are directly tied to district focus or district initiatives or priorities. And earlier this year, you approved 3, and those include the Wilmington High School, the Wilmington High School Program Review, the Wilmington Middle School Program Review, and the School Start Time Project. I tried to just briefly summarize the core content of those goals, and that was, again, all information that was brought before you, of course, as a committee back in the fall it was, and for which you approved. And my effort here was to try and provide some reflection on those goals briefly, and from my perspective, what was accomplished through the work. And timely as it may be, 2 of these goals, of course, are going to be expanded upon a little bit further tonight in upcoming agenda items. So with that, I'm happy to take questions if members of the committee have, but I know that this is important information as you pursue the next couple of weeks as part of this very big task that I know you have before you. But again, happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about these documents? Mr. Smaha?
I actually don't have a question. I just have just my comment is thank you. I really appreciate the setup of this and the ease with the links, and it makes everything a lot easier for us to sort of, because the work is so expansive that it's nice to have it packaged in easy to consume ways. So thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. Mrs. Plowman?
I was surprised that under Standard 3 for family and community engagement, you didn't link or reference the PAWS, the sort of work with the PAWS group. And I wondered if you might want to include that as well.
Sure, I thank you for that, pointing that out. I guess I didn't, at least my initial inclination was, because it wasn't work that I alone initiated or came from my office, so quite honestly, I didn't feel like it would have been appropriate to include that, but.
I do feel like you work closely with them, you communicate with them and Jen obviously regularly, so I don't know.
Sure.
I was just surprised
Thank you.
to not see that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments about that? Thanks, it looks great. Just echo Jay's comments. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Okay. So changing gears completely, the next number of items in order again. Coordinator of Nursing Services announcement. There was a memo that went out to the community recently, and just to bring to the attention specifically of our community members who may be watching, we have been so thankful for Ms. Rebecca Brown, who has been serving in the role of interim coordinator of nursing services. And she stepped into this role at last minute, following Ms. Doreen Crow's rather unanticipated departure right at the end of last school year. She has done a terrific job from all vantage points and continuing to help support our operations behind the scenes, in the front line with our families, particularly the earlier part of the year. We did not know that she was stepping into something of a longer term, and quite frankly, nor did she, truthfully, but based upon the opportunity to work closely with her and the opportunity to gather just some direct insight from all of those that she's worked with closely, particularly our principals and so many other school nurses, it just seems like it's a great fit for our community, and she has graciously and kindly agreed to stay on and transition into a permanent role. So that's what we did here, and I think it's a great fit for our community. And so we have some stability in this important role as we move forward. Item C, Wildwood School Update. There are 2 items to share with you. One is in the packet, the memo, and then a very brief slide pack that I'll go through in just a moment. As some in the community have recently come to learn, with news that has been shared now with the staff of Wildwood, as well as our families and our future families. Hopefully we have tried to connect with all of them. As the memo outlines here, there's obviously been a lot of developments as it relates to the Wildwood School facility over the last number of months. Really sparked by the unanticipated human error that led to the need to move out of the facility, and that human error, of course, is through the third-party oil company who led to the oil leak that has unbelievably led to a massive cleanup that's underway. And I point that out, that this was human error and just certainly no fault of anyone at the town level or at the school, in the school department level. That work has been ongoing. Mr. Ruggiero and I have met on a number of occasions with Mr. Hooper, Superintendent of Public Buildings, as well as the town manager, Mr. Hull. We have considered a lot of different aspects of the Wildwood, and it has always been the case that plans were in place to return the building to a place in which it can be reoccupied. The cleanup that is happening there is there's a lot of check boxes that it has to meet from an environmental standpoint, but it has always been the case, and the support of the town has always been there to return to that building. However, after a lot of discussion and consideration for some concerns as it relates to some of the systems there, and I think more importantly, the overarching concerns that I know that this committee knows very well around that facility, it seemed to Paul and I particularly that to move students back and our staff back to the facility for next school year, even with the building ready to reoccupy, just does not seem prudent. It does not seem in the best interest of students, their families, or staff. So the decision has been made to not return to the facility for the fall or at all for next school year. And we are looking at alternative locations again. It's right now, this evening as we sit here, it's premature to just assume that every program and every classroom is going to stay in the exact 3 locations that we're in now. We are trying to take advantage of a little more time here that we didn't have when we had to quickly vacate, and just make sure that we can do the very best we can in terms of the layout of classrooms. It remains the absolute case with 1,000% certainty that I can convey to this committee and the community that we do not have space in any of our other 7 schools to relocate the entire Wildwood School. We do not have space in any of our 2 existing schools to relocate the Wildwood School. And yes, I know that there is attention to a decline in enrollment, and some of the community might say, well, there must be space. I can assure you there is not space. We have looked at it from every single angle. And unless you talk about the addition of modular classrooms, which is a very different conversation, there is not space. So hence why we are likely to still be in 3 locations. We are going to try and finalize that plan, as I said, in the coming week or so, because we know that time is upon us to let families know, and of course let our staff know as well too. So I know that this is not news that anyone really wanted. Certainly we didn't anticipate it, but again, on balance, it seems like the prudent course to follow. And with that, I'll connect just briefly to this slide pack, because it is very much related as well to this decision. Members of the committee will recall that back, I think it was 2 budget cycles ago, we presented to you as a committee, and for which you approved, a capital item. And that capital item was to help us as a school community and as a town explore possible scenarios in which Wildwood, the Wildwood Early Childhood Center could be relocated if we needed to vacate the building. For whatever reason. And when we presented that capital study, that idea to you, of course, we did not know that any of this would materialize. Unfortunately, that study got delayed as so many things did, as part of the pandemic. And so the town was not able to sort of push that out on the street, so to speak, and secure possible interest from vendors. But that has been done. We do have a firm that is in place to help assist with this study. And that firm, I'll get to just in a second here, but that firm is Dorr and Whittier, and they are, for lack of another title, completing the Wildwood Early Childhood Center study. Not to be confused with the MSBA building project. This is very distinct, very different. And again, it is trying to help us as a school community figure out where it is and what the options are for which we can provide space for accommodation and space for the Wildwood programs. And so the project is underway, as I said, and they've had a number of meetings with our school staff. They have toured all of our schools throughout the district. Town manager and George Hooper are obviously an important part of this work. And Doran Whittier is the firm. That firm was a piece of this high school project, but Doran Whittier went through the bidding process for applying for this project, and they are helping in completing this study. The goal of this study, in case you're wondering, and again, how does this intersect with the MSBA and a new school building project? This study is specifically focused on trying to figure out what our options are to relocate the well over 100 students and staff into other spaces. And that's the only goal of this study. The schedule for this, they are working right now to develop options and costs, looking at, again, our space across the district. They are anticipating finalizing their option set by either late June or July. And in turn, what the project will entail is providing those options and sharing those with the community. Of course, as a school committee, you'll be front and center to receiving those options. And I suspect Mr. Hall will want some of his boards to also receive the information. The plan right now is to develop recommended options that seem to be most feasible for the community to consider sometime for August or September. So there's lots more to come here in a relatively short period of time. This study and the options that come through it will not impact the location of Wildwood for the fall. I highly doubt that they'll impact the location of Wildwood for next school year at all. But I just want to make one final thing clear. The Wildwood location for next school year, for the 2022-23 school year, is not the final landing place. It cannot be for the Wildwood programs. It will be a long year, no doubt. I know the staff are disappointed, having met with them here in this room yesterday. But I know in my heart and my mind that they realize that they're in better spaces and better places to help support our students. And while not ideal to be segmented into 3 locations, it is better than the space that they left, and we need to figure out another space for them for the balance of the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years until we can get a new school online. So obviously a lot more with this to come, but I thought both are important here. I'll pause if you have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
Thank you for the presentation. Is a portion of the requirements of their study for the next few years that it be an option that's accomplishable during the school year, so that we would be in a place where something different than the current situation would be available for fall of ’23? Is that one of the gates they have?
Yes, I certainly would hope so. And I mean, it needs to be for the fall. And I think part of that will be obviously based upon cost. There is no option. There's no option here that's going to emerge that won't involve cost. There just won't be. Back to my earlier comment, there is not space in our buildings for the program. They're just not. So they're going to look at various options and then and put those forth. So, but we have to press on something for the fall of 2023.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Can I go? Be quick. I just want to, I think whenever we discuss this, it's so important to say a thank you to you for your leadership in identifying that building as a priority when you first came on. And I think that I want people to understand, especially new families coming into our district who may just be hearing about this and ask questions like, how did this happen? Or that one of the very first things I think within your first year that you said to us as a school committee, or the school committee at the time, was, have you seen the Wildwood? And I'm so grateful. So I know it feels like we're not in a great space, but I'd also we're in a far better place than we could have been because we've applied to MSBA, we've been accepted, and so we're actually moving along in the right direction, despite sort of where we started. And if this boiler thing had happened and we hadn't even applied to MSBA, I think we'd be in a far different position. So I just want to remind everybody that it was Dr. Brand who came in and said, hey, we need to take a look at this. And I think that that's often lost in some of these conversations. So it's a lot, and I know we're facing a lot, and people are going to be upset, but I'm grateful that we are in the place we're in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, sorry.
I also, it's an unfortunate situation, but,
Okay.
you know, that you play the hand that you're dealt, and we have, you know, a short-term plan for what we're doing with the school, you know, for this coming school year, a medium-term plan, or we're developing a medium-term plan for what we're going to do before we have, you know, a real new building for them. And then, of course, we have the long-term actual plan to get new school construction. So I think that, you know, given the options that we have before us, that this is, I think, the right choice to make. We would hate to go back into that building and just feel like at any moment something can like go wrong, and then suddenly we have to move everyone out again, and that would be incredibly disruptive to all the students and staff there. And so it seems also clear to me that this is the best of the available options that we have at this time, but that we are moving forward with trying to get better options on the table.
Yeah. I mean, and to applaud the team for moving an entire building.
It's been a team effort.
I mean, like, every time we
been
come
a
up
team
against
effort.
something, and I'm like, but we moved an entire school building. Like, I mean, that's like totally unbelievable to me that we were able to do something like that so quickly and so efficiently, and so.
Now you raised the bar.
Well, it is, thank you, and a final point, it is a team effort. It's also, you know, again, a shout out for the Wildwood staff who, you know, this has gone so seamlessly because of the work that they have done. And, you know, obviously coming off of a lot of hardships, in particular for that staff over the last, you know, short period of time. So we are collectively grateful for them too. The last item, I know these are some heavier topics and all important ones, but just the timeliness of this seemed appropriate, and just to keep it here in front and center in front of the community. So the memo on the last item is regarding our plans for bullying and harassment program for next school year. Just in short, we as a school district made the decision back in the 2016-17 school year to move forward in the acquisition or purchase, I guess, if you will, of the related materials for the MARC bullying prevention program. MARC is an acronym. It's Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center. And that MARC is based out of Bridgewater State University here in Massachusetts. And they have become a real driving force. There are different programs out there, indeed, that can help support school systems with bullying and harassment prevention programs and educational programs. But MARC is definitely a program that you don't have to look too far to other school systems to find it in place. Wilmington made the decision to pursue MARC back in the 2016-17 school year, as I mentioned, and then first rolled out the program in the 2017-18 school year. I share this to say that this is not a brand-new program out of left field, and that there was not thought put into this. But the key piece to highlight here now is, as we move forward, one of the things that I've come to learn and our team has come to learn is that we have room to grow and improve in terms of the full implementation of the MARC program across our school system and all of our buildings, K to 12. And, you know, it's this time of the year that we start, of course, thinking in earnest about next year to come. And this is here just to signal clearly to our community that one of the things that we will be focusing specifically on is building out and fully implementing the MARC program in all 8 schools, and doing so horizontally, vertically, to use those words, across the board. That is not to say that work around MARC has not happened in the last few years, but I think it's very fair to say we have, again, room to grow. And also the partnership with our families is a part of this program. MARC is about the educational component for bullying and cyberbullying and bias and diversity and healthy peer relationships, but it's also about effectively partnering with families to help build the language, and to help build the awareness, to partner with schools, to collectively as a community support our youth. And so more to come on this, but it just seemed timely now as we're quickly bringing this year to a close and thinking ahead to next year. Sorry that it was a lot, I know, tonight, but I'm happy to take questions on that last item if there are any.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Smaha?
Yeah, I thank you for including this and sort of updating us and giving some of that background about, you know, this isn't something that's brand new, that's coming in, but it's sort of been in the works for a while. I think there's, you know, there's a perception in the community that Wilmington has a huge bullying problem, and I don't know, you know where the truth lies in that statement. But I think part of the highlighting that you had, especially that memo of saying this is a group effort. It's not just the job of social workers or school counselors, but it's everybody. And I want to liken that to the idea that this is a community thing. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, we think about the, you know, what are the models, what are the role models for our kids? And I think that there's a lot of bullying, I think, that happens in this community. And I think that we need to be very much aware of the, you know, what is the example that we're setting for our children? So it's not just the schools. It's, you know, if the schools have a bullying problem, then Wilmington has a bullying problem. And I think we really need to be thinking about what's the example that, you know, we're setting. We need to be, you know, aware of our own actions. So I appreciate this being in here.
Very well said.
I like that, Jay.
I think we should stop there, because that was, now we're all just going to say, I agree with Jay, so I'm gonna move us on for our many participants this evening. Thank you. All right, and we can come back to that, of course. Next, we have the Wilmington High School Handbook. It's a first read, and we have Ms. Peters with us, and we have our incoming principal
Yes.
as well. You wanna say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, yeah, sure, no, thank you. Thank you to Ms. Peters as she comes forward here. Wait, let's stop and think about this. Is this your last presentation before this committee?
Maybe.
I think it is. And with Ms. Peters is Mr. Gendron, who is, of course, our incoming principal, and he's here. He's here because he has been working carefully and closely with Ms. Peters as part of the transition planning, and that includes this here tonight. So, thank you both for being here.
Of course, yeah, and I just want to emphasize it's work that might not be visible, but Ms. Peters has been an unbelievable partner, you know, spending a lot of time and energy and effort and care, making sure that I'm aware of projects that are in motion and work to anticipate. So I think I want to make a very public thank you to you for that time.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, we did work for a long time, our SAC, our high school SAC and administration, on really looking at the handbook and seeing what needed to change or what we needed to update for next year. There aren't a lot of changes, but there are some updates. The addition of the vision of the graduate pages. We rearranged the sections of the handbook. It just seemed to make sense to put some of the sections following each other. This just seemed to make better sense. The academic section, it has been updated to include the competency determination for MCAS. The updates also include the approved changes to GPA and the new weighted system that will begin for the class of 2026. That is included in the handbook. And there is some updated language on the section of withdrawals from a course. We did not change the policy, we just really articulated it, just I think in a more clear way. Under student services, we had a transportation section that was separate in our prior handbook, and we added it to the student services section, which included the bus and safety expectations that Mrs. Ferretra provided for us for all our handbooks. In the student rights and responsibilities section, we do have some expectations around our interdisciplinary block, and we included them in the handbook because we did include them in our discipline chart, which is really the next section of the handbook is on student discipline. The two parts of that section that we did a lot of work on was the actual chart. We took the chart that we had and we amended the descriptions. In our prior handbook, we just had the infraction. In this book, in the new handbook, we included a pretty in-depth description of the infraction so that it would be clear. We also listed possible consequences that range from detention to expulsion. And I think you can see that the chart includes those three consequences or types of consequences, which are described in the discipline section before the chart. And last year, we had a question, I believe, that the smoking and use of tobacco policy didn't really match our vaping policy. So we combined those policies into one chart and made all of the consequences the same for smoking, tobacco use, and vaping. So we just amended that part. And those are the updates and the changes that we made this year.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Mrs. Plowman.
We talked about the decile system. Where are we with that? That's not referenced in here. Can the committee remind me of did we vote?
The new GPA.
Yes, but are we doing?
The decile versus the ranking.
The decile versus
Straight
specific rank.
We did vote on that. And we went with the recommendation of Molly and Ms. Peters.
Decile ranking.
Of the top of the 10, 20, yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yes, and that is here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'll look back.
There was a lot that we discussed at that time, so.
Yeah,
I know
I kind of got lost.
No, I
on me.
understand.
This isn't specifically related to the handbook, but under the student services section, at some point, I would love to hear at like a future meeting perhaps around the use of counseling services for mental health versus career counseling. I just want to understand and ensure that supports are adequate at the high school and that counselors are able to meet the career counseling needs of students given the spike that we're seeing in mental health needs and my sort of awareness of what's going on in schools right now and speaking with a lot of parents of students in Wilmington who have just recently gone through the college application process and just kind of like to hear how are the counselors doing and are they feeling supported enough in their work around being able to meet both of those requirements, the mental health needs, the career counseling needs. So as I was going through the handbook and looking at some of that, it just sort of dawned on me that I would love to hear a little bit about that. And then my last question was related to the SBIRT, the substance use screener mandated by Governor Baker in 2016. I just hadn't heard of that before, and I didn't know if there was an identified team at the high school. It also references the middle school, too. So I didn't know if students are currently being screened at those grade levels, and I just hadn't heard of it before. So at a future meeting, perhaps, we just get a little update on that. That would be great.
Can I go? Also, at a future meeting, not for now, but, every year I review this, and so I've seen it now for a lot of years, and I appreciate the updates. It's so, I want to say this in a nice way, but it's just not user-friendly. And so I'm like, oh, it's just, I can't imagine being a parent for the first time and just how intimidating this would be. And I just wish there were some way to make this, to me, it's in the handbook, but are we, and so we have to have these things, I know that, but I also can't imagine that families are reading through over 100 pages prior to enter. But I understand things have to be in the handbook, so I'm wondering if there's some sort of middle ground where there's it's there and we have access to all of it, but something that a student could really engage in, I think would be. And so I'm looking through some of it, and I'm just I wonder if this needs to be here, the health stuff, the chickenpox, the measles. I'm does that need to be in this? And do we sort of think about it in terms of two handbooks, one that's really meant for kids and parents to, and then all the stuff that we have to have it somewhere. So that's I think the changes are fine. I'm totally comfortable with all of that. And that would not be any change I would expect to see between now and the second reading. But just in terms of every year, I'm whew, this is a lot. And I'm looking through trying to find, and I love that you tell us where the changes are, because otherwise I'd be it'd be lost. So, but that's just my feedback on some of this. Aesthetically, I think it looks great. Happy to see the new principal's message. All of that I think, I'm completely supportive of. So thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Thank you for the smoking, vaping. We appreciate that. You good? Are you thinking? Are you gonna? Okay. All right. This is a first read, so it'll come back to come back to us next time as a second read. So if there's anything between now and then that you have questions on or thoughts, make sure you do send it ahead of that second read, second read. Otherwise, it'll be in our consent agenda. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. It won't be the last time we see you, but maybe the last time at this table. All right. Next, we have our middle school program review recommendations presentation and our principal entry plan report. And presenting, we have Dr. Quirk, Dr. Brand, Christine Elliott. You're cheering over here.
The front line today.
And then I'll recognize that we also have the middle school assistant principals with us. So thanks for being here, Mr. Kyra, Mr. Fairclough. We appreciate your attendance.
Actually, sorry, Ms. Samstow, could we switch? Sorry. Order.
You want the entry plan first?
Yes, please. I'm sorry about that.
How are you?
So, good evening, again, everyone, thank you. It's a little bit unconventional, but it seems appropriate.
This is a different perspective. I don't have to sit like this. We might do this more often.
These are two different presentations, but they're really the same. And there is, as I think you'll see as we go through these, certainly a lot of cross-pollination, if that's the right term, in terms of some of the ideas of where we're going here. And just as a sort of a point of reference, we do have the reality, pandemic or not, of Dr. Quirk having transitioned into her role as the permanent principal after kindly stepping into the role of interim. But despite that transition and that reality for Dr. Quirk, there certainly still is a reality that as the new person in that role, in that sort of proverbial corner office, is really a golden opportunity, and it only happens once, in my opinion, when you move into that new position, to take a pause and scan the environment and try and learn and listen and really deeply get a sense of what's on people's minds. I use the term entry into these roles, an entry plan, entry report, and it will forever be important to me going into these roles. And so Dr. Quirk is here tonight to provide you as a committee and the community with insight in terms of what she's gathered through that process. And then we're going to sort of transition into the middle school program review, and hopefully you'll get a sense that I think they come together rather nicely. So,
thank you. How is everyone?
Good.
Thanks for being here.
An entry plan for anyone that's coming into a new position is really an action. It's a research project, right, where we take account of all of what's going on in that environment. So for me, it was a series of surveys and some meetings with people, and looking at the information. My doctoral studies definitely helped me when looking at all the survey data and being able to pull out things, the themes, which we'll get to later. But you know, it was an enjoyable process and something that I look forward to actually continuing in some way, because I think it's a great way to gather information. For this project, I surveyed staff and parents. I did focus groups. I used an exit survey that we started last year with the help of the CTLs at the high school and Mrs. Peters. We created an exit survey for our students. This year we hope to implement that for students and the parents. So that's what I'm talking about continuing this sort of thought process. And so also looking at other middle schools, which would help, you know, to find best practices. Creating recommendations, and then because of the middle school program review, it was a lot of collaboration with Dr. Brand throughout this process. So my initial thoughts, thinking of what, you know, I'm in a unique situation because I had been at Wilmington for 5 years prior, right? So trying not to come in with any bias in any way, but being completely open to everything that all of the different constituent groups were going to tell me. And, but one thing that I knew going in is the word consistency, in regardless of what topic we were talking about, was prominent in any conversation I had, whether it be email, face-to-face, anyway. But I wanted to get a deeper understanding of everyone's perspectives and wanted to, you know, understand, you know, and take a true account based upon the viewpoint of parents, students, and staff. And here I just reiterate that again, to gain a stronger knowledge and to determine concerns and issues as well as successes. And, you know, hopefully to create an environment where staff, parents, students, and the community, what their priorities are and how we can move forward. So in tonight's presentation, as we go forward, I'm going to talk to you about all the information. You'll see some quotes up there. So to bring things more to life, showcase what I view as goals for next year, outline also steps that I've already been able to take, and that's where it'll meld very nicely together, I think, with Dr. Brand's presentation, with the plan going forward. So the participant demographic information for the parent survey, in January, I had submitted a survey. 95 parents had submitted entries. And I showcase here the overall span of their perspective, right? 34 were in 6th grade only, 25 7th grade only, 26 8th grade only. And there were 2, 5, and 3 with different grade levels. To gain some further information, I also held a parent night with help with Dr. Brand and the PAWS group, which was also helpful. And I, to be honest, never had done something like that before, especially virtually, and I thought it went very well. And we had 34 participants that evening, so I thought it was a good group. The participant demographic information from the staff. I have approximately 120 staff, ranging from teachers, ed assistants, custodians, kitchen, anyone that works in the building. So we had conducted a staff survey. 67% of staff members had submitted entries. 59 were teachers, 6 were ed assistants. I had a custodian, and 1 from central office. And the average number of years of experience in education was 11 across everyone that participated. the participant demographic information for the 8th grade exit survey. In the spring, we had conducted it. It was something that was done while the students were in school. We had 249 students in the 8th grade that year, and 111 had participated. This year, I also held a small focus group with some current 8th grade students, and when I get to it with some of the information, I'll say a small disclaimer there, which why some of maybe the answers were a certain way, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So through the research, and because it's all anecdotal, it's a little subjective in that coming up with these themes, and I can explain that as we get further in. But there were 3 overarching themes that came up: the communication in some way, school climate, and curriculum instruction were the 3 big topics that came up. So it should say the next few slides, but the way that the presentation's gonna going forward is that I'm gonna give a definition of each of the themes, give some information, then I'll provide some quotes to give you a perspective, and the last part of each section will be some goals that I have for next year and going forward. Okay, so the theme number 1 for is communication. It's important for communication to be consistent and have the following characteristics of it. It's consistent, it's up-to-date and targeted, and it's across the school and the classroom levels. And there's 4 major areas when you talk about communication. So crisis communications, internal communications, media and community relations, and parent engagement. And it should be that the same message is being said and is clear to teachers, students, and parents. That's the goal. So when I look at staff, there were some concerns and expressions about the communication, and here's the quotes. Timely communication of happenings and events taking place in the building other than last minute, a system of communication in which questions and issues are heard and responded to. Decisions that impact a lot of us are being made by pressures that staff put on administration. And the second quote, teachers and other staff need to be on the front lines in receiving communication. Sometimes we feel blindsided by a lot of information shared to us later. Parent comments. There are multiple issues that need to be addressed at Wilmington Middle School. The most important priority is communication. As a parent, I do not feel that I receive timely information from administration and teachers. I would like to know more about the topics kids are studying each week, the cool projects being done at WMS, the good news and positive happenings in the building. I believe that there should be some sort of consistent weekly newsletter or parent blast sent via email so that parents have important school information as well as upcoming dates in order to feel more connected to the school community. Communication needs serious improvement. Short, sweet, to the point. The students there, I do not have student comments on communication. Disclaimer, I probably think that they feel that they get communicated quite a bit. Teachers talk to them directly, parents talk to them directly. The questions also weren't directly, maybe something where it could have come up with that, but there's a few reasons why I don't think we don't have them. But communication, so next steps. So again, these are things that I hope to at least start next year, and we'll develop as years go on. But I'll be creating a communication plan for each of those 4 areas that I talked about earlier, where it'll talk about the medium, whether it'll be a voicemail, a video, a virtual meeting, a live meeting, that sort of thing, the frequency, and who will be providing the information. It is ridiculous to think that it'll all just come from me, right? It should be coming from administration. Hi. And it should be coming from teachers and from students, too, as well. But my bi-monthly reports, I like to call it a run report, reminders, updates, and new information, as well as an internal good things newsletter. Videos and lessons to provide the understanding on the WMS core values. And Mrs. Bryson, this might be something that's, the global piece of number 5 too, with your point about the handbook and how thick it could be and overwhelming, that, quicker sheets of that, so that it's quick sheets for this is what you have to do here, and also videos on how to do things throughout the handbook. Resurrect individual meetings with staff members. That first year during the pandemic, I was able to meet with individual staff members, and of course on a volunteer basis. But I gained a lot of information about that, and I hope to do that again. Create a quarterly newsletter to update families on what their students will see in their classes. Currently, we do a parent night at the beginning of the year, but perhaps something where it's quarterly and can describe in general what their kids are going to see and learn. Virtual kindness board in the main lobby. So a kindness board is a big television screen, right? But it also attaches with a program that allows parents, students, and teachers to submit kind words or congratulations that they want to give to others in the building. There is a mechanism where it is screened first before it is posted, but it's something that I've been looking into and hope to do. And number 9, too, explanation videos on important topics. I think that's a good way to reach people. I know that a lot of information, for example, gets sent to the kids in the morning announcements, and that's where I'm using that information from, and I think that'll be good. And welcoming communication program to incoming 6th grade students and new students. So we had started some things last year that we're looking to continue for those students over the summer. Traditionally, what had happened prior was for 6th grade students was that they'd have their moving up ceremony, right? And they'd come to the middle school and then they'd do a tour, which I can understand most of them forgetting in September, and also being overwhelming of how big the building is with all of the middle school students running around at the same time. So last summer, what we did was teachers volunteered to come in. We did personalized tours, small group tours where the parents were involved. And then the next week, with the help of the PAC, we did the traditional scavenger hunt, but then we made it more of an open forum too for parents to be able to meet with administration and where the kids use their knowledge from the week before and ran around the building to find things and got a T-shirt at the end of the time. So it was a good day, and so we're looking to continue more of that. Eventually, even would like to have what I'd call a step-up program, where maybe it's more personalized and a part of an enrichment program eventually, but we're looking into that and trying to get that undergoing. So. Okay, school climate. So specifically, to me, school culture and school climate, those terms are intertwined a lot in a lot of, people say it's educational magazines and things of that nature. So I'm calling it school climate, which the definition would be the physical attributes and social traits of a building. The value system, of course, has an academic element, and school culture is part of school climate, where it adds the ways in which the members of the institution interact with one another, and it's the building of traditions. Okay. A positive school climate should foster consistency with a sense of fairness. Students react positively, as we all know, and the principal and teachers have clear expectations and concise consequences. So, staff comments. The culture at the middle school is one of friction, distrust, and tribalism. Staff buy-in. After so many years of changes in administration, now that we have the chance at stability, I think we need to get staff buy-in to longer-term changes in order to really start turning things around here. We could do great things if we could get the staff support. A culture of togetherness within the student body and staff. And I love the culture at Wilmington Middle School. I feel supported by administration, and my coworkers, my team that I work with has been helpful, open, and accepting. This is my 2nd year at Wilmington Middle School, and I plan to stay for a long time. I thought these quotes were great because it gave the spectrum of people's perspectives from staff. Parent comments. There are people that have a great experience at WMS, and there are people who have not, and there are people that are just passing through. We need to look at those percentages and find the commonality between them so that we could fix it. It will take everyone, administration, teachers, students, and parents to change the culture at WMS, but in doing so, it'll help shape, I don't know whether that's a typo there where it says WHS, or what, but I can see how it should be WMS, and the future of our kids, but to keep it true to what was written, it said WHS. And there is bullying that seems to go unpunished, which ties in with your comments earlier. Students. So in the question, when the questions were asked to see what students would want, what they'd like to see at Wilmington Middle School, these were the responses, which I thought tied into the climate, right? So they'd like to see more volunteering, leadership opportunities in the school, and extracurricular activities in a community, right? The middle school's biggest strength is the teachers, because most of the time they can help you and take the time to make sure you understand the concepts. So I thought that those were two important ones to talk about the student's perspective. So my next step in goals, right, is to create and to continue on building traditions at WMS, the Wilmington Middle School. I'm really excited about the moving on ceremony. You know, it's something from my previous district that it was a tradition there, and hope it goes well. I'm sure it will. Last year, due to the pandemic, we did as was mentioned earlier, a backyard barbecue. We're hoping to enhance that. Again, with the help of the PAC, I really can't thank them enough. I have two ladies that are here tonight, and it's been a great experience working with that group of parents, and look forward to continuing to do that. So just wanted to say thank you to them for everything that they do. Promotion and instruction of the Wilmington Middle School core values. So as we move, you know, we used to have the 4 R's, as we called it, but we're definitely into circle, and using that and promoting that. The development of the vision of the high school student. So this was something at last year's MSAA conference that was presented, that much like the vision of the graduate, it is what middle schools are starting to do, and the same concept and theme, that it would be the vision of the high school student, where it would display what we hope to do and gain with the students as they matriculate through the middle school and eventually pass on to wherever they're going, right? And I think that'll be great to let parents know and students know what the expectations are as we go through these 3 years with them. You know, they change so much, right? They're little babies when they come in, and then they're formed adults, humans, right? So I think it's important, right? The institution of an activity block or advisory block, I think that in some ways we can start you know, without major changes to the schedule or anything of that nature, because that would come potentially in the future. But I think we can definitely take some steps into laying the groundwork to do that. This also ties in, number 5, with the communication. So it's my goal this summer to look at everything that we were able to accomplish this year, and again, tradition. So create a year-long calendar of events so that we know that April is always going to be Kindness Month at the middle school, and that we're going to do certain things there and things of that nature. So it's clear early on at the beginning of the year that this is our goal of what we're going to do throughout the year. Provide additional opportunities for parents to come into WMS. I think that we've tried that more this year than ever before. The field trip that was last referenced with the music, we had some great participation. We had more parents as chaperones. I think that parents have a wealth of information when it comes to what they're doing every day in their lives and their hobbies. And I can see a lot of ways in which that can help build that sense of community and climate in the building. And this was something that came up when I talked to the students, that for myself personally, to set aside more time to be more involved with the individual students and activities. Apparently they want to see me in the classes. And I look forward to doing that, because I have to say, as I've moved away from teaching, as taking on administration responsibilities, I definitely miss being in the classroom as being a math teacher. So I look forward to doing that more. I was surprised by that one, so I was happy to hear it. So curriculum and instruction, although said together many times, curriculum and instruction should be distinctive in their definitions. Curriculum is what is taught in schools, instruction is how curriculum is delivered, and learning is what knowledge or skill has been acquired. So know that that is my, you know, it's a common definition, but that is what I used when going forward, right? So staff comments. Updated materials for all staff with some instruction on how it is intended to be used. This could fall back to having time set aside for team curriculum planning. We need to keep class sizes small so that kids can get more individualized attention, especially where they have gaps from their last 2 years. Having a late bus so that it is easier for all kids to access after-school supports. Paul, I'm sorry about that. Tier 2 interventions to help students who are struggling academically, socially, and emotionally. There needs to be some sort of time/place where students can receive the interventions they need before they fall too far behind in the areas in which they struggle. And scheduling. Allow for intervention, support blocks, advisory, although directed study could become this, right? We instituted directed study this year for those, to let you know. It was more so to help with giving 5 lunches to have the kids spread out, right? But it allowed us to have a 30-minute block within the day where kids could get some extra help. Electives offered academic support classes for literacy and math that aren't just for kids on IEPs, support classes for kids who need homework support and or mental health support. So just so when I made that comment earlier too, I'll bring it up here, the how it's subjective, right? Some of these quotes here do not have the word curriculum or instruction in there, right? But there were some other keywords that I used to describe that, like interventions, right? Or scheduling, and so just so that you understand that that's where it's subjective, that I attached interventions to curriculum and instruction because that's what made sense in what I was reading. Okay. The parent comments, implementation of clear, consistent curriculum. Teachers appear to do what they want without consistency from one classroom to another. And students should be completing the same level of work across houses. So as you know, we have 3 houses across each grade, so that the same expectations are there, is what I'm taking from that quote. And the kids. So here is another disclaimer. It was an after-school activity and a group, and I had provided pizza. So perhaps the talk about lunch, because maybe they like the pizza, was why there was quite a few comments about lunch, just to let you know. School lunch options is a good one, but I do, so when this was, should be a high priority. So school lunch options should be a good one. But I do like how we have directed study before lunch because of it being a time where you can do your own thing, not in class, but continuing to do school and homework. And when the students were asked what single decision would have the most impact on your education at Wilmington Middle School, one student responded, what house you are put into. For a person like me who is not very social out of school, the house I'm in decides my friends. If I'm in no classes with one of my friends, I can't really talk to them that much. It also decides what teachers you get, and some teachers are really good and they teach you a lot and are fun. So, I thought that was a good overall perspective on their instruction. So next steps, again, I had mentioned this earlier, but I think that it's important so that parents understand, it might not, they'll understand, for example, my goal is the standards for English, right? And they might talk about the different teams are going to be doing a unit and use a certain type of book, but each team might, with the teacher's personality, might choose a different book, but it's going to tackle this topic or this genre type of thing. Work to create a schedule with more, as much time as possible for subjects while providing time for interventions and or an advisory program. With that, what would that mean? And we'll try to decipher that and look at other schedules and things of that nature. Review additional UA course offerings. I think it's important right now that what we have is the kids have to take, they get to choose really band, their performing arts, right? But then after that, what we have there is there's no choice in the matter. It's the kids have to each take this class that we have. So looking at creative ways to have more of that aspect, whether it starts out as some new clubs and activities too might be a way, but just looking to make sure that we're providing a vast variety of courses, and provide time and resources for the creation of cross-disciplinary projects. I would love to start seeing that where, maybe a team has a cross-disciplinary project and, my job would be to make sure that they have the time and the resources to be able to do that. So as I conclude, right, I really want to I'm pretty excited about next year and what could happen. There's been some things that we've done already, like last year we piloted two new clubs, the World Culture Club and our GSA, which I'm happy to report that we'll be continuing, as well as we had such an overwhelming response to art that we're going to be able to have 2 art clubs, right? But there was that one quote with the parent that I'm just going to read the ending lines there, where it will take everyone, administration, teachers, students, and parents to change the culture at WMS. In doing so, it'll help shape WMS in the future for our kids. And so I've actually provided an example that wasn't included in the original presentation, where this is our student council kids have helped me in last year at the Moving Up ceremony at the 5th grade. I participated and I gave a speech. I'm going to continue that, but also provide a presentation created by my student council to introduce them to Wilmington Middle School. So, some of these videos and things that I talked about aren't just going to be you hearing me or Mr. Kyra or Mr. Faircloth, but you'll be hearing it from the kids, and here's an example of what the kids created.
I'm Bella, and I'm part of the Wilmington Middle School Student Council. We collaborated with each other to create a video that will show you all the exciting things that you have to look forward to in your next 3 years at Wilmington. Robotics Fun, and this year we made this robot and controlling this robot, and we encountered our face of the problems, but we've really been enjoying this program. This is how classroom research is held for 6th graders. After-school sports itself. It's an after-school club that anyone can go to. We also have a very fun basketball tournament that happens only in 3 languages you can take. The 3 languages you can take are French, Spanish, and Italian. The World Culture Club is also hosted in the Mountain. It is open to all students, meets with Mrs. Stefano, and explores cultures around the world. Ciao! In here you have your chorus classes and some of your general music classes. After school, the a cappella group rehearses in here, and this is also where we have our drama club. As you can see, we still have our stained glass windows up from our play Beauty and the Beast. We will play every other day, and also we play with the whole entire band instead of just group. Also, we're jazz and English, an after-school club for jazz. If you like to be creative and enjoy doing art, you can do an art club after school with Miss Gill. For example, our stone reliefs. I'm Emma's not a girl. She's an explorer teacher, and she also goes to GSA Club and Lit Journal after school activities, GSA stands for Pastry Online, and Lit writing, we're our teacher, best buddy. You were going to see that. That's so cute. Best buddies just like come out and hang out after school. Right? Yep. Come on, friends.
So, thank you very much for giving me the time this evening. If you have any questions.
Mrs. Burns.
So, being your entry plan, how are you shaping? You've got a lot of goals and a lot of objectives to hit. What's your plan of tackling each of those goals and the objectives underneath? You can't.
I can't do it all.
Not all at once. So how are you structuring yourself how are you setting yourself up?
So I'll be looking at the resources that I currently have at Wilmington Middle School, right? Or in Wilmington Public Schools, for example, when we talk about some of the ways of communication, I'll be utilizing the CTLs and making sure that, for example, that would be, I would need that information for the quarterly newsletter that during the department time that, make sure it's an agenda item and then it's something, a deliverable that I can add to that and I would be piecing it all together, as well as those 2 wonderful gentlemen that are over there and utilizing them and making sure that we are
Delegate, delegate, delegate.
Well, yes, but I like to be hands-on too, so not too much delegation. But that would be an example of what I would be doing.
Only because I think they're all great objectives and targets. I just wasn't sure how you were prioritizing and then how, almost like a waterfall, you know what I mean? But the other aspect, since you noted it a couple times, that comment from the parent comment pertaining to the school climate, I think it is meant to say Wilmington High School because it says parents to change the culture at Wilmington Middle School, but in doing so, it will help shape Wilmington High School and the future of our kids. So that's what we're looking for, the future to come here.
Right, and that vertical alignment is important. My experience here throughout my 6 years in Wilmington has been great with working with Linda and the admin team there, and look forward to it with Ryan. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Wish you the best of luck. I really do.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the presentation, and I appreciate the range of comments, and part of what I always want to keep in mind is all the good things that do happen at the middle school. There's a tremendous amount, and was very aware of it on this past Friday with that field trip. But the piece I'd like to bring up is when Dr. Brand met with the teachers recently, one of the questions he asked is, what's in the program review, what are we missing from where we've gotten so far? And I think the teachers there have gone through so much over the last years with the pandemic and before, and they are the common thread that are there for so much longer. The students come through in 3 years. It's a relatively short period of time. It's a critical part of their life, but it's a relatively short period. The parents may have 2 or 3 cycles, but the teachers, to your average of 11 years, have this much longer range impact. And so to keep them engaged in the right way, and in some ways, it's an element of delegation as well, and empowerment, so that they are truly in line with where you're headed with these goals. They're all great goals, but as long as they're empowered and aligned and working with you, things will move much more, I believe, smoothly and forward.
I think you'll see some of that being brought up with Dr. Brand's presentation, but I came to Wilmington because I thought it was a great town, a great district, and a great community. I'm staying, right, because of the people that I work with every day. So I think that they know where we need to go and are, for the most part, are on board with what we're going to be doing. So I'm pretty excited.
A quick comment and then sort of a follow-up question to what Mrs. Myers was saying, but I appreciate clearly the thought and the work that went into this. And partly as a member of this committee, but also, the parent of an incoming 6th grader next year. Like I really appreciate sort of the thoughtfulness that set this all up. I wonder if it would be appropriate for us to see if you could come back maybe 6 months or a year later for an update, sort of to what MJ was saying about.
Absolutely.
There is a lot, and be nice to
see how it all worked out. I would be more than happy to do that.
But I'm waiting. David, are you waiting too?
You can go.
You can go. Want me to go? David's got a whole list. I'll go. No, I'm kidding. I have a couple of comments, and I'm deciding whether or not I want to speak or not speak because I am so intimately connected to the middle school, having had 2 children, one gone through and one in it. So I'm trying to just make sure that I'm thinking as a school committee member, not as a parent, and that's very, very difficult for me. So I'm trying to think, okay, in my role as a school committee member, these are the sorts of things that stand out to me. I think I want to make sure, and I'm seeing definitely evidence of this, but I want to ensure that we're not just putting Band-Aids on issues. You might think sometimes it feels as though we're just like, okay, we're going to fix this, and we're going to fix this, and we're really thinking about this sort of like, and I think we'll see even more of this in Dr. Brand's presentation, but really healing from the inside out. That it's not about a kindness board when you walk in, but it's like, what does that represent? What is my goal here? What is my vision? Why would this be important? Is this really going to engage all kids, or is this going to continue to isolate some kids? So it's like, I want to just be sure every decision, every new initiative, everything that is put out there is so deeply thoughtful. Who is this affecting? Who is this including? And is this excluding someone? Because I think that what we see is a place that many children feel joy, And as we saw in the survey, many children do not feel joy. And so this idea of finding joy when you walk in there, and I'm not putting that completely on the middle school. As we said, that's a partnership. But knowing that my child is finding joy and that word of joy, I think, can't be overemphasized enough. And I just want to really just emphasize that. As a parent, I want my kid to be happy. That is my primary goal, aside from all the other pieces. I want them to want to be there. I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel heard. And I want them to feel safe, right? And I think that is a big piece of this climate. And so I'm seeing, like, the moving on ceremony, the 8th grade, and all of that's wonderful. But it's like, we have to make sure that kids feel seen and heard, all kids, not just kids in student government, not just kids who seek these opportunities. And I'm reminded of this quote that I sent out to my colleagues recently that says, and this is not really in reference to this directly, but it keeps coming back to me. I keep reading this again and again. We need to bring mental health into the classroom so it doesn't require a student needing to make time or getting motivated to seek help. There's a lot we can do to bring mental health into the default of students' lives, and I think you can change that out for anything. We need to go to them. We can't expect to set up a bunch of new things and have kids go, oh, good, I feel sick. We have to pull them in, and I just feel like that is one of the pieces that we're missing. It's working for some, but it's not working for all. And that's where I get to this, like, I just want to make sure it's not a continual use of Band-Aids.
Please know that everything that you're saying is important to me, and I think it's just that the what the purpose of an entry plan is versus a program review. I think you'll see some of the things when it comes out with Dr. Brand's presentation of things that this was it's the research. I take the quotes, I make steps based upon what is directly there, where a whole program review would tackle more of those things. So with that perspective, that's why you might not see that here, but would see the ties to it with the program review presentation.
And I've previewed that, but I just can't stress the urgency of this enough, and I think I'm stressing it for us as a committee, I'm stressing it for our leadership team, and I'm stressing it for our families. This is urgent, and we absolutely must commit and devote our time and our energy to making sure everyone is experiencing that middle school in similar ways. Not the same, everyone's not gonna get the same, but everyone, where people are coming out and saying, this is the experience I had, and it feels pretty equal across what we're seeing. And I think that we all need to commit to that, and that means that we need, as a committee, to completely get behind this and do our work and support the people who are in those spaces doing that, so. Okay, David? Do you have anything?
Well, all right. Well,
sorry. I told you, I'm trying to keep my separation here.
Well, I have, I think, sort of much the same connection. This is, I'm currently in year 4 of what will be for our family 8 consecutive years of having a child at the middle school. So we're kind of halfway through, but another 4 to go. And there's been, we've seen a lot of great things and had good experiences there. I think that, joy is certainly like an ideal quality, but it's also a lot to ask of the middle school years. I think one thing we always have to bear in mind is that the middle school years are kind of in some ways inherently miserable, and there's only so much that that we can do about those about some of the changes that kids go through during that time period. But I think that a feeling of belonging and connection is so important. It's like you can't be happy all the time, but you can feel cared for all the time, and feel that you're, connected to your community and to your school, and that there are people who at least are, looking out for you, and on your side, that are on your team in this, difficult experience to go through, and I think that that's a really important part of what we want to build. And those sort of the feelings that we want students to have during that time there. I think that this is a good overview and a good kind of clear-eyed view of the challenges that we have at the middle school, as well as the things that we're doing really well there. And I think that the breadth of quotes that you included I mean, I commend you for the, some of them are a little, are obviously negative and kind of unsparing, but that's important that people feel that way, and that we need to know that in order to address those types of issues. And I think it's important, again, to look at this issue clear-eyed, to see the school as it is, see the places that we need to, continue the good work, and then look for our opportunities to even go and improve from here. And I think there's a nice balance of, kind of some of the low-hanging fruit that we can jump onto. I think that some of the communication pieces that you listed are things that I agree are important to work on, and I think can be kind of worked on quickly. I think those are some of the, the slightly more straightforward. I mean, when you talk about getting deep into culture and community and so forth, that's kind of long-term project that doesn't happen instantly. But I think some of the other aspects are definitely things that we can really kind of get started on. And I also feel the urgency, and I think that there's some good work that we can begin right now and have already begun to develop some momentum, because I think that's kind of also a feeling that we want to have, not just in our in our middle school, but in our district. Just kind of like a feeling of momentum, a feeling, the right direction, wrong direction question is a really important idea in people's minds about, like, are we heading in the right direction? Are we going in the wrong direction? Are we building momentum, or are we kind of stagnating? And I think that this is a good blueprint for how we can build that positive momentum.
It's the thought of the first step, right, is what's next year, and I have no, I would welcome coming and talking about how things are progressing and how things are going to change in the years to come. But again, more of it's going to come out in Dr. Brand's presentation.
Just a couple real quick things. I do want to compliment you, Dr. Quirk, for many aspects of your entry plan presented tonight. I love that you sought out a lot of feedback from a lot of stakeholders. I appreciated the transparency of the quotes that you included and shared, and I acknowledge that, like many things that our district and as a committee we're working on, those things, the challenges like predated Dr. Brand, predated you, Dr. Quirk, and I think that it's essential that we as a committee and as a community at large work hard to maintain a supportive and positive outlook on your endeavor to really make some improvements, because I know that will undoubtedly impact the success of that work. Just a couple of things that I would love to maybe see you include in some of your entry plan goals would be, like, around the communication piece. Like David was saying, like low-hanging kinds of fruit would be things like identifying like who responds to parent emails, what's a timely, what would you consider like a timely response or time frame for getting back, and who is the person, who's the point person for responding, so that not just kids are feeling seen and heard, but parents are too, because so much gets trickled down, right, to kids. Like, how kids feel about school is usually a direct reflection of how their parents feel about the school. So I think tending to some of their needs as well is really beneficial. I love the idea of building tradition. I think those are like guideposts for people sometimes. Routines, traditions, those kinds of things can be really grounding. But something that I kept seeing sort of in the next presentation, the Jamboard stuff, what I hear a lot from parents in the community is around the discipline procedures and sort of really looking at that and how that is approached. And I feel like that's sort of one of those things that we can respond to immediately as well, and making sure that there's consistency. And also in the next presentation too, I'm sort of, either this is sort of a good segue or I'm jumping the gun, but I read a bunch of times like wanting one more administrator, and I was thinking, gosh, how many administrators are required in that building? Because we have 3 very strong leaders, and it made me wonder, like, I'm curious, and I don't know this, and not for tonight, but perhaps in a future meeting, to sort of understand the division of how the three of you sort of share roles and responsibilities, and is one person the disciplinarian, or do you split it by grade? Because someone had said multiple times, maybe there needs to be an administrator assigned to each grade. So I would just love to understand just the basic blueprint of how discipline works, how, et cetera. So,
and those are all valid points. Please know that some of that information is in that, in the 100-page handbook that's, yes. And that is one of the things that, why I didn't present my handbook tonight, right, is to give this, and then I'm coming back for that. And part of, it's also those things as when I talk about like those videos, right, or those instructional pieces.
Yeah.
So, more to come.
Sure. Thanks.
It's in the next presentation. And I do want to add, I think, and as we all saw, curriculum instruction seems to be a real strength. And I, as a parent, I see that. As an educator, I see it and I know it. And I think as part of this, what I'm calling like systematic communication, I hope that we can highlight more of all of the, I think we've seen more in recent months, but I think, to try and tell the story of what is happening behind those doors, it's a beautiful story, and I just think we need to sort of get it out there in different ways so families can see what some of us know is happening behind those doors.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, can we move on? Sorry, as I think more to come in the next presentation. So.
Ms. Ingersoll, could you bring up please the next one? Okay, thank you, Dr. Quirk, and I just want to, before to begin, to thank Dr. Quirk and Mr. Faircloth and Mr. Kyer, who are, as you noted here earlier tonight, they've been a big partner in this work, as has Ms. Elliott certainly as well too, and equally important, and talk about in a moment the entire Wilmington Middle School staff. So this is sort of bringing to the close the work that's got to this point. But it really, as I'm thinking about Dr. Quirk's presentation and some of the comments here, the shift here really, I hope, and our communities and parents will welcome and embrace this, is a view ahead. It's not a view in the rearview mirror. It's not looking in the rearview mirror. It is looking ahead. And to acknowledge the fact that we're here, in part, Dr. Quirk's here doing our entry plan because of tremendous transitions, but equally so because of some incredibly challenging times for the school as a whole. And, I think maybe this is the last time we comment on this, but to not discount enough the fact that I firmly, after 4 years, can say this from what I've had the chance to do, which, outside of the pandemic has been, to be fair, somewhat limited, but a really clear sense of some really, really strong staff at the middle school who have found themselves in a really, really unfortunate circumstance of the tremendous upheaval in leadership and lack of stability over more than a decade. And it doesn't rise and fall with leadership alone, but the stability of a building and the programs and services and systems absolutely suffer in the lack of that. And so I just think that that's important for our community to keep in mind. But that's enough about that, right? We're in terms of a view and trying to embrace, hopefully, what comes through this collective work of some excitement of looking ahead and how to move forward with the expand upon the story that's there, as Dr. Bryson said, but really look ahead to the future. And so this program review really is about trying to do that very thing. This is not about tonight highlighting the many great things that are in that school and that came through the review. We've spoken about those in the previously. They are part of sort of the record, if you will, of this review and this report. And just for those members of the community who are interested in this, we are trying to make all of the information around this available, and we have a section on our website for that very thing. The program review really is trying to seek priorities or establish priorities that will, it is believed, positively impact the educational community at the school. And that includes for students, that includes for staff, that includes for families. And really, what I think is really important to consider as we move forward are a couple of key things, and that is that decisions that we make, programs that we pursue, directions that we're interested in going have to be based upon what research and best practice has found to be important and effective. It also has to harness and include at the forefront the insight and the perspectives, the experience of our staff and our school leaders. It has to, in some way, seek to engage our entire community, and that community includes parents, guardians, and caregivers. That includes students, and of course, that includes staff. And always, 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 last but not least, of course, what is in the best interest of our students, those that are in the building and those that are coming forward. I know on the screen this is a little bit dark background, so I apologize for that, but hopefully your packet is a little bit clearer. So we're setting the stage as a reminder here for this work, and again, sort of where it's coming from. This is the recommendations that come through some of the many streams of information that has been gathered over the last good number of months. And the staff, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the middle school staff. I met with them yesterday to walk through this report with them and to extend my thanks to them for their engagement in this process and their will to sort of put their ideas and their reflections, their honesty, and sometimes raw honesty around some of these things out there. The recommendations that are in this report, and I should point out this is a presentation obviously, but it builds off of a full report that it's included in the school committee packet and that it will be available on the website. The recommendations are divided into three categories or three sections. And staying true to the approach that I quite like that the Associated Middle Level Education, or AMLE, provided in their pretty robust survey that you might recall. I think that those work quite nicely in terms of a framework for thinking about the school as a whole, the framework being culture and climate, curriculum instruction and assessment, and leadership and organization. And I think finally, just fair to say that the recommendations that follow here, they don't exactly touch upon every single area that was perhaps highlighted through this process, but I think that they do, at least to me, serve as to be those that are most pressing, and that's are ones that we should get going with certainly fairly quickly. So the process of developing the recommendations, for those that are sort of tuning in and members of the committee, just to provide context here, these recommendations come from a thorough and deep review of all of the information that has been gathered over the last good number of months. They were, and I appreciate, Mr. Turner, your comment earlier about just sort of taking us back in time. They were compiled and shared with the middle school staff early in May to seek their feedback, their ideas around what might have been missing, what hasn't been touched upon through the information that's been gathered. And that process, I think, was very, very helpful, and I'm hopeful that the staff feel the same. Following that, there was a review of preliminary recommendations that were generated, and then going back to the middle school staff, seeking their perspective on what they felt to be the most pressing, what they felt to be the most of priority to help move their school community forward. And based upon those priorities, then leading to these recommendations that are before you tonight and in this report. This is, you've seen this graphic before. I won't go through it in the interest of time, but it expands upon these research-based ideas when we're thinking holistically about middle-level education, because there is so much that's so unique about the middle school educational experience for students. I would argue in many ways it is more unique than the high school, more unique than the elementary school, in order to effectively meet the needs of young adolescents, the most challenging time. And if you've had the chance to live in a different community, or like I have, work in different communities, everywhere I have been, middle-level education in the best of schools is always the most challenging. It is always the centerpiece of those that fear the middle school because of all the reasons that we know to be true, absolutely based upon research, of the challenges that come with trying to educate a young adolescent. It just is, and I don't care where you go, that's the reality. So this is an effort to try and weave together what is coming here in terms of the recommendations and thinking about this holistically. And I like this visual in the sense of that the success of the school really has to fall back upon these areas. It is not just about culture and climate. It is not just about leadership and organization or curriculum instruction, but those are collectively pieces of the success of any school, not just a middle school, but obviously the focus here tonight is on the middle school. You've seen this before, but I thought in sort of building this out, it would be appropriate to sort of remind everyone around the context when we're talking about these things, around what is exactly culture and community. And it is this. It is about the engagement of students. It is about the respect and value that our staff and our educators need to demonstrate for those that they're serving. It is about counseling services. It's about all of these things. And this sets the stage for the recommendations to come. And as context, I guess a little bit further context, I provide these here for you. From my vantage point, these are recommendations, but they're my recommendations as your superintendent. And I think that they are what reflects, based upon all of the information that's been gathered, what sits there as the most pressing areas that I think our staff have pointed to at the middle school, that the research and best practices point to, my own experience in a variety of roles in middle school education that I also believe are important too. They are not in any particular order, with, I guess, the exception of the first one, and that is the student advisory program. Tonight, time definitely doesn't permit to go into too deeply in any of these. Obviously, we can when that's appropriate, but what is a student advisory program? If you have no idea what that is, it is about forging connections between our kids, our students, and the adults that they see every day at a school. It can be called different things. It generally tends to be called an advisory program, and it is about, in a formal way, trying to build connections that go beyond the classroom, outside of the math teacher teaching math to his or her students. And it is without question one of the things that I have found from personal experience and know the research points to, in terms of what is most effective to try to forge those relationships with students so they want to come to school every day, so that they know that they have a trusted adult that they can confide in and go to when, as they will, times get tough. And so this is without question what I think is most pressing and something that we absolutely can get going with for next year. School-wide expectations surface through a lot of the research, and it's not to say that there aren't expectations, but it's to make sure that everyone is clear of those expectations, and that everyone includes staff, students, and families. And so it sits there as, I think, an important priority. There was a lot of feedback around the school counseling program, and that's not to say that there's not good work happening with our school counselors there. But what seems to be an important opportunity is to really take time to articulate what that program is, to make sure that staff in the school, students in the school, and families connected to the school are clear about what the services are and the programs are that are available to access. Extracurricular activities was touched upon earlier, and certainly I think is really clearly something that we can improve upon and expand upon. Yet another way to try and build connections with young people to the school that they're in, especially at this grade level, all grade levels arguably, but certainly at this grade level. And I think that there was good work that was started actually before the pandemic in trying to build out and expand a program that was interrupted, but we need to return to that. And I think part of this in the full report talks about even exploring whether or not there is interest and or the possibility of pursuing interscholastic sports with other communities. Some middle schools have those programs, not all, but some do. And so, anyway, extracurricular activities certainly would be something to expand upon. Community partnerships, that came through very loud and clear through a lot of the research. How can we forge stronger and deeper partnerships with our families and our community members? I think there's a variety of ways that are captured in these recommendations, but one is to partner with our families to make sure that they have the resources and they have the information that they can help support their child, their young adolescent, in partnership with our schools. Culture and climate. It's been mentioned a few times, obviously, over the course of these presentations, but it is so important. And it is so important, it's being mentioned here in the context of this report focusing on this middle school, but as an aside, this is a conversation for another time, but I really think we need to explore this at all schools. And that sort of a little prediction ahead is I will share with you what I'm thinking about as we move ahead to next school year. You know, a 360-degree review is never bad, in my opinion. It highlights the things that are going well. It highlights the things where there's opportunities for improvement. So while it is a recommendation here specifically for the middle school, this is something that I think provides an opportunity, or could provide an opportunity for us going forward in all of our schools. Okay. Curriculum instruction and assessment. Again, sort of context setting for what exactly we're talking about here within this realm. You've seen this slide before. But if I may, I'll move into the recommendations that come through this. So Unified Arts Program Review. Dr. Quirk mentioned this certainly, and this came up as well directly through staff feedback and other streams of feedback. This is not to suggest that our Unified Arts program, and by Unified Arts or UAs, we of course, just to be clear, physical education, the arts, music, and so on. It's not to suggest that anything is necessarily broken or not in a good place as it relates to our offerings. But much like we did with the high school program review, if you think about it through that lens, the opportunity to take stock of what we are offering our students who are in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, making sure that we have, if you will, contemporary programs that are the high interest subjects for students, that are also purposeful in terms of building out their connections to the world and preparing them for what's to come in the high school. And I think we need to do that. As you can see, the timeline there is not to do that in the next 3 months or the next couple of weeks, but it is absolutely, in my opinion, entirely possible and necessary to complete that review by the fall, might be the late fall, but by the fall of next school year, and then take the next 6, 7 months thereafter. And if there are new courses that are come online or the revisions of courses to come, to take that time to build that. This is absolutely doable for a year from the fall. Student-led, just go through the next quite quickly. Student-led conferencing. This is something that a couple members had maybe a question about or wasn't certain about. In short, this is about trying to build responsibility and engagement of students and ownership in their own learning. Again, tonight, there's not the time to go into sort of greater detail here, but truly having students not advocate for themselves, but reflect on their accomplishments, working with their teachers and sitting down with their parents, guardians, caregivers. It's a real powerful process. I have seen it in action, but it comes through the research as well, too, in terms of something that's really powerful at this age. Curriculum alignment, certainly that came through some of the feedback of Dr. Quirk's report. There's always the need to do that, let's be honest. But certainly when you're talking about a house system or these different tracks, if you will, all the more necessary to make sure that we have things in line. And interdisciplinary instruction. I don't think that it's something that is too much to expect us to explore how we can weave together different subjects in a way. This is another one of the many examples that can lead to greater student engagement, greater student interest, and when that's happening all the time in different realms, obviously a deeper connection to the school that they're in. And I think that holds true for staff as well. The last area, the third area, leadership and organization. What are we talking about in this realm? that idea and the importance of shared vision, of stakeholder engagement, all stakeholders, right? The key orientation around the young adolescent, and what is equitable in terms of practice and process and programs and services for all. And that includes the organizational structure. So walk you through some of these ideas within, some of these recommendations, within this realm. There is in place right now, I think Dr. Quirks shared with me, the team lead structure, and that's representatives from the instructional teams, as I understand it. The shift that I think is sitting there, and it came through loud and clear through a lot of the staff feedback, is the opportunity for them to be a contributing voice in decision-making, a partnership in what is being decided around something that may be not so big but certainly impactful. That's my term, school success team, and it's more than just a name. But I think really taking the idea here is really for Dr. Corker and her instructional team to take that team lead structure and really think differently about what they can help accomplish. The success of a school is not just going to rise and fall with a principal alone. Everybody has to have ownership in it, certainly, and that's really the heart of this idea here. The values, vision, and mission is somewhat similar to the earlier recommendation around expectations. And I think Dr. Quirk, if I remember correctly, talked a bit about this, but really engaging the community and making sure that there's clarity and there's coherence and there's an embrace of what is the mission and vision of that school. And what do they value is so important. Effective middle-level best practices. Back to maybe an earlier comment, there is an awful lot of ideas that sit out there that are undergirded by research and have been found to be effective. And I think we need to be really purposeful in trying to make sure they find their way into our middle school. Some of them are larger than others. Some of them are structural. Some of them may be connected to the curriculum. But just in general, making sure that we are regarding the middle school as unique and different as it is than the elementary and high school, and making sure that what we're thinking about to structure that environment reflects that. And this is about teacher involvement, it's about leadership involvement. The second to last, new student-teacher schedule. Again, I pointed out that these are in no particular order, but it seems clear that there's a couple of things that we really should, I think differently about in terms of the structure of the middle school and its schedule specifically. The school right now is running 7-period day, and that's a lot of transitions for students and teachers over the course of the day, and it also means that those instructional time periods are shorter. Going to a 6-period day can obviously reduce a transition, and it can expand the instructional time that a teacher has with their children. And there is lots of insight around the ability to take those kind of schedules and sometimes expand time, sometimes get into block scheduling, sometimes do things that are more creative, that are actually better for student-teacher interactions, aside from sort of the turnstile. And the turnstile, lots of schools do run 7-period days, so this is not in any way a criticism on the middle school here. But we can, I think, do better in terms of structuring instructional day to increase those interactions between students and teachers and teaching and learning. So this is not a proposal or a recommendation that is, I'm thinking, goes into effect next year. We need to take time to understand the options with this and how it can be built, but it absolutely is not a new or innovative idea, but it's taking time to understand how this might best work in our context here. And then finally, professional development. It became really clear through the feedback to me that our teachers there at the middle school have a real deep desire and appetite to grow professionally. They said that. But they also acknowledged that they'd like to have perhaps more of an opportunity to help direct that, or to make sure that it's personalized and directly helpful for them. Makes a lot of sense. And so that's the final one there. So what are the priorities out of this long list? And if you were to take a step back to take a look at the timeline, and I shared this with staff yesterday when I spoke with them, I know that there seems like an awful lot here within a short period of time. But there are a couple of things that I would point out. Some of these are larger and will require more time for planning. Some of these are not. Student-led conferencing is an example. And again, not to go into the details there. But what I most importantly said to the staff yesterday is that the success of this overarching plan and the recommendations that are here really, really relies upon the contributions of staff to work with leadership to help move this forward. I won't go into greater detail tonight about this, but for most of these recommendations, there is, in my mind, a plan that unfolds around providing opportunities for staff, small groups, maybe slightly larger groups and others, to be contributors to this work. The student advisory program is one. So this is, as I mentioned at the outset, this is a priority. This needs to happen. And how we're going to get there, hopefully, is with the opportunity to have some of the staff at the middle school involved and become part of a train-the-trainer model. I have been engaged with AMLE, who provides professional development around this, and we are I'm in the process of setting up something for the end of June to lay the foundation for this for next year. So some of these we can get going on sooner. Some of them will take a little bit of time, studying the UAs, for example. But you can see the timeline here. So with that, if I may, I'll just sort of conclude with, again, my thanks to the middle school staff, leadership team, certainly for being here tonight and being a partnership. The students and families, right, there's a lot of information that was collected through this process, and certainly getting to this point really would not have been possible without their input and their ideas. Again, as mentioned here, I think these recommendations are important. That's not to say that there may not be more that come in time, but I think that these present an important opportunity to, as we get on track with these, I'm confident will help improve the environment, improve the school community for those that are there and those that are to come through the doors in the future. And with all of that, I know that's a lot, and I know it's getting late. I'll pause and happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Mrs. Bowman?
I loved this. I really, really did. I love the organization of it. I love the timelines. I was thrilled to see so many of the goals or the items listed being identified as achievable for next year. I thought your timelines were realistic. The one question that was sort of pressing for me is, are we concerned at all about staff engagement? Because I'm sort of looking at a lot of, and maybe some of these aren't additional or new, but a lot of like the middle school education best practice team, the school success team, the advisors for advisory and the student advisory planning team, and the interdisciplinary project team. So it's a lot of working groups.
Right,
and I wondered if you were worried at all about garnering enough support from staff and staff engagement to fill all of those wonderful spots that you're envisioning.
Yeah, and obviously it's a great question and it's an important one. I think the thing that was a couple of things. The thing that was quite overwhelming, not overwhelming, but was really clear through that you mentioned, I think, earlier the Jamboard exercises, right? That again, for copies, this is the direct, that's raw staff feedback that's in one of the reports. What I was really pleased to see was the coalescence of so many voices around some of these ideas. I mean, and so my point in saying that is, a staff of 80 educators roughly in total. I have found in my experience that inevitably there are those that are staff that have a higher interest in one particular thing. And my hope is that we will be able to have a couple of people who are interested in item A or recommendation A, and others who might be, this has to be shared. This has to be shared ownership. And to be clear again, to reiterate, this is not and cannot be a list of recommendations that is going to hand over to Dr. Perkin and the team. That's not this. But there is an opportunity sitting here, from my perspective, for staff engagement, to take these ideas that came from their own thoughts and contributions. Did they happen to match with mine in research? Yeah, they did, and that's the excitement that came off the page when I saw it. But my hope is that we will, look, it's been a tiring year. We need to end this year and have a reset. And so really, with the exception of the advisory program, the pieces can be put in place, but the work doesn't necessarily have to happen until school gets back, until late summer, with the exception of the advisory program. And I am banking and with fingers crossed, hoping that we will have some staff who will want to play a leading role in that. And as we have that reset, with a staff of 80, and so many of these ideas sitting there of high interest to so many of them, I think we're going to get the people.
Will you be able to give us an update on the advisory program in one of our summer meetings?
Yes.
Very excited. Yes, Jen.
Yes,
Summer.
She did say one of the summer meetings. I thought we were just having one.
Meetings plural?
I think we should meet regularly in the summer too, yes.
Weekly.
Put that as an agenda item for next time. Questions, comments? Mr. Smaha?
Again, thank you for that. Thank both of you for this. I thought it was, they're very much connected, and you can see reflections in both of them. I think the basis of this sort of being in trying to include all the stakeholders in this, really looking at what, in the entry plan, what are all of these different groups saying, I think, and then seeing that in the review as well. And one of the major ones, of course, I'm biased as a teacher, but of including teacher voice and the importance of that. And I think that is what it's going to be one of the factors that is going to really, produce some good results at the middle school. I think, one of the things that you said was that, there's this shared ownership there, and things aren't going to rise or fall with who the principal is, and that really gets me thinking about how well you've really done some thinking here in basing this in research best practices, and it's really like these sustaining and sustainable systems, that are, it's not going to be here's this one thing that this is going to be the thing that's going to make everything better. It's here's this system that we're going to put into place, and that system can be adapted and flexible and responsive over time as the needs of the community, as the student body changes, as the teachers change. So I just want to say that I really appreciate the thought that's gone into all of this. So thank you both.
A quick one, thank you. I'm not going to repeat what they said, but I echo their thoughts. There were at least 3 or 4 different times that you mentioned there's not enough time to go into this here tonight, and I agree with that, but what I would ask is that through the course of the fall, maybe every other meeting or every third meeting, pick 2 or 3 of these and provide updates on them and be able to expand a bit more on them in chunks through the course of the fall.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This comes back to me anyway, recognizing that, of all of our schools, as was mentioned, not to belabor it earlier, this school, let's be honest, has struggled, right? It's struggled for lots of reasons that I said we weren't going to do this, look backwards. But, this is collectively about taking no less of an important school than any of ours in the district. Every single student moves through it. And so I think it's only appropriate sort of, we're trying to wrap our arms around this community, help push it forward into the great things that it can achieve for our young people and for the staff there. So I think that's easy to do and a great thing to do, right? Because this will come together, and our community needs to, and I know they'll want to hear about this, so thanks.
Thank you. And as the first year of these programs and the entry program enablement, it's the right time to keep it on the agenda on a very regular basis through that year. Please, thank you.
So in the organizational section, there's some discussion of looking at the schedule.
Yep.
I think I like the idea of reducing the number of sessions in the number of classes in the day. So I feel that that's a positive direction to go in. Has there been thought about more of the schedule is obviously very fundamental, but just the house structure, the teaming structure of how we deliver education at the middle school and sort of like split up into the three houses, and people kind of shift between them a little bit, but is that even like the right number of houses? Do we still think that that's the right model for us to use? I mean, we don't use it at the high school or anywhere else. Has there been thought given to that issue?
That is a great question. Thank you. The reason it's not here, I guess ultimately its absence should not, in terms of the teaming, suggest that it's not important. In fact, research points really strongly to the benefits of teaming and organization, that structure of breaking, again, young adolescents specifically, into a team of teachers. Sometimes we'll find a variation if you were to look around of a teaching team of 3 people or 4 or sometimes 5. But the research is really clear about the importance of that, number one. And number two, the feedback that we received, particularly from staff, pointed to that, identified that. So sort of the alignment of both of those two, my own belief as well too, I'll certainly add that in there, sort of remove that off of the, okay, what not to change, at least in terms of the teaming structure. Now, with that said, regardless of this program, we have to look carefully at enrollment. We have to carefully look at how we balance those numbers, and we'll have to adjust, accordingly anyway. Part of the UA review and part of the schedule, though, certainly could impact the total number of teachers we have as part of a team. That could shift that. In terms of the house structure or system itself, I mean, I think that's an important question. I didn't obviously go into that realm. I don't know if you want to, Dr. Burke, talk about that or your thoughts on that, but.
It is one of the things that we'll be looking at when we look at best practices across other schools. I've seen a variety of different ways. I know that the middle school in general has gone through changes too, right? Where there's a reason why there's Challenger, Discovery, and Explorer, the same name across the different grades. It used to be that they would, students, for example, would stay within the same house. And now, we've changed it. And then there's, so to look at our own, not to look back, but to look at our own best, our own practices that have happened and what we learned from them, and also other schools as well. So one of the things that we'll be looking at, for sure.
And I'm not against the, house structure or teaming or anything like that, but it seemed a little bit notable that is kind of a pretty fundamental organizational aspect of the school, and I was wondering about the thought that had been given to that. I think the other question I have is that looking through a lot of these pieces, it seems that there are, everything has to happen on a timeline, but there are some of these that can be thought of as a little bit more parallel, and there are others that clearly have to be somewhat sequential. That some of the later work can't be done until you have the teams in place that are designed to contribute to some of that work, as we were just talking about, like some of the various working groups and committees and so forth. And so, how are you kind of thinking in terms of structuring the priorities so that we think like, well, this is what can be done, but these are the things that need to happen before the next part happens? This is, I think, important as far as structuring and planning out.
Yeah.
Accomplish these
so goals. I think that and I've actually, although it doesn't show up here, already done some preliminary thinking around what that could look like and should look like, and getting some people into place, some staff into place with some smaller working teams and groups, and then sort of not the word gridding, but timetabling or scheduling this out. These things certainly do coalesce and have to come together around a timeline. So, I was thinking about this the other day, this is almost sort of, it's almost a mini district strategic plan, I mean, really, thinking about it. And, and this work, again, this work is important that I firmly believe I need to be a part of in making sure that it's coming together. It is not something alone that Dr. Quirk and her team can shoulder, but that I and my team have to. And so I'm really thinking about this. I mean, this is a whole sort of an addendum to our strategic plan, another thing we have to get back to. But as we do, the focal point of my work will be making sure that we're on track with all of this. So this doesn't necessarily show up as sort of that overall map, but I think it can and needs to, in fairness for staff as well, to sort of have a sense of what's coming and when. I know it looks like a lot of disparate things that are sort of floating out there, a long list of initiatives, but they can come together, and there are some parallels for sure.
I'm glad you analogized it to the strategic plan, because I had the same thought that when we created the strategic plan, once you really get down into, but what do these things mean? What do they look like as action steps? And that summer after we approved and developed the strategic plan, you and your team just spent a lot of time actually sitting down, but what is this actually going to look like? This in the end has to be translated into actual, action steps and, initiatives that are going to be launched to achieve these goals. And I think that it's exactly the same situation here.
Very quick things. In Dr. Quirk's presentation, there was some mention of tiered interventions as being an area of focus. I didn't see that here as far as what I would consider either tiered interventions or a differentiation, so I just wasn't sure where you would place that.
I think I hope that this is true. I think that may have gotten left off of the presentation, but is in the full report.
I feel like I've seen it a few times, so I just wanted to just reiterate, I guess, the importance of making sure we attend to that.
I definitely also captured it in here, but again, it may have missed getting into the presentation.
That's okay.
So, but it's definitely a part of this.
Just wanted to make that point. My second comment was looking at all the people responsible. I'm not seeing students. I don't know what role students will play in some of their voice, I guess, just to make sure that we don't forget to listen to them and hear about their thoughts. I'm curious to know what some of them would think about the 7 to 6 periods. I think in some ways I'm thinking, oh, it's so great for movement breaks, but on the other hand, it's not a lot of time. But one of the benefits of going to the middle school is being able to move around more often. And so I just think those sorts of things, I wouldn't say obviously but I think there are always consequences to some of the things that we think are going to be much more positive. And then lastly, with David's comment about the houses, I think that my hope it would be that this advisory block would somehow thread this together in different ways. So I love the house structure in terms of there being one place where all those core teachers sort of have their own, I would imagine what would be like a student support team, where they all know that child, so they're able, but then my guess is there's this advisory teacher who then can kind of see that child across other areas too, right? Their language class, their PE, and so that to string it all together is sort of how I'm seeing it. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Or
it
possibly?
could be all of the above, I think that you
Okay.
just said. But and one of the things that also, whether it be through the advisory program or whether it be through the other thing that I know didn't get into the presentation, but was with community connections or community service, I think as well too. But opportunities to figure out ways to also bring together different students from different grades, and or creating not longevity, but continuity between relationships with students going from one grade to another. Advisory could be one of those ways, and I think we need to explore that. That's a model. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily the model that we would land on here, but linking together a group of students with an advisor, the adult, for all 3 years. Some schools run with that. It is something, I'll be honest, that I think our team should explore and consider. There could be other ways as well, too. But I guess the final point, somewhat touching upon what you mentioned, is the advisory program will involve all staff in the school.
Yeah.
And so it'll be a rather unique way to kind of bring everyone together that doesn't happen, right? We often think about silos or categories or departments, rather. advisory brings everyone together in the school, sort of unlike many other things. And so that's a definite, and whether that emerges as a support team or whatever, I think that will gel together in that way.
That's great. And then to start, just like Melissa, I loved it. I mean, I think that I'm really excited about the direction and sort of the cohesiveness of the entry plan and your presentation. I think that it certainly sets us off in a good direction. So I thank you both
Thank you.
for collaborating on that and keeping it so tightly connected. Are we good? I know we're all good. No, I'm kidding. Thank you. Okay. I know we have lots of people here, and I know there's actually another. How are we doing? Do you need a break?
not have transportation
You need okay. We're just gonna take a quick 3-minute, 5-minute, 5-minute.
Move to take a 5-minute recess.
Is there a second?
Second?
Wow. Everyone in favor? Melissa, Jesse? Oh, yes. Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We all here? We are gonna really seriously jump to our last, pretty much our last item in here, and that's the start time change vote. And we have some guests with us. Thank you for being here and for staying here. And we'll jump right into it, so
Sure.
Glenn, that's you.
It is. In your packet is a memo for.
Sorry. We just started, I'm so sorry. We didn't do anything, but.
She was here.
I shut the door. Oh. It's been a long night.
In your packet is a summary and a recommendation regarding the start time work and the discussions that we've had. And thank you, and thank you, Lisa and Patty, for being here. And again, apologies as well for this going so late into the evening. We've had obviously a lot of discussion around the start time exploration and consideration, and thanks again to obviously our PARS partnership to help gather a sense of the community. I guess that's what I would call it, because it was, I think, a real deep sense of the community. It seems to me like, based upon the data that we've now have before us, there's no question that there are a couple of things that I think it's reasonable or fair to take away from sort of the view of our community. And I tried to outline these in the memo that you have in the packet. I think first off, what we know is that really there is a belief, a core belief by our families, that we should try as a school system to align our start times with what research speaks to the best we can at the middle and high school level. That certainly families don't like the idea, understandably, of having kids wait for a bus early in the morning, especially younger kids. That we should be, as a school system, mindful of after-school activities and athletics, and making sure that we don't interfere with that for students at the high school level. That the CARES program, no matter what our start times are, is important, as an important component or an important program that we, to the extent we can, be thinking about to try and still provide access for them. That 8 o'clock seems to be a magic number or magic hour that by a vast majority of parents, guardians who filled out the survey believe is acceptable for the start time for all students, regardless of age. And finally, and certainly but not least, is that there's no one scenario that we had or modeled of the three, or probably any scenario that we could come up with that everyone will love or everyone can get behind, because it does impact everybody. And so I tried to highlight those things. But I think also in consideration for some other factors, we also know that we have a transportation system model and policy that has come up on a number of occasions, transporting all students anytime they wish, and we've talked at length about that. And that certainly seems to be something that I think we should further consider going forward, because it does and can have an impact on how many buses we need, and how many buses we need truly can impact the whole models that we have. And that could lead to additional scenarios. We also know that there's other things at play. We talked earlier about the Wildwood School, and now that up in the air. We also recognize that the timeline is not just this, at this point in time, May 25th is, for some accounts, rather late to make a change for next year. I know that there's maybe differing views on that, and that holds true from staff, and it seems to hold true from families, people to say, if the decision could be made by the 1st of June, we can adjust. But that doesn't necessarily hold true for everybody. But all of that being said, my recommendation to you, and obviously this has always been situated as a decision for you as a committee to make, but my recommendation to you, I've tried to outline here, I think that we should truly make changes as a school system for our start times. I think we have a problem that impacts our students at the middle school and high school for the start time that they currently have. So I do think we should make changes to our current start time. I do think that our community would support that. I think that the feedback that we have in this survey points to that. But I do have hesitation to recommend to you a change for next school year. I think for all of those factors above, I think we have some more work to do and some more consideration with you as a committee around school committee, your policy on transportation and rethinking that, and continuing to think about CARES and how it is that we can adapt or adjust CARES depending on the scenarios. So what I propose is, on the bottom of the memo there, is in terms of a timeline. It's not my suggestion or thought that we reconvene another start time committee. I think we can, both as a school committee and as a team, dig in a little bit deeper on some of these variables, if you will, do so over the coming, whatever it is, 6 months, and then come to terms by the start of the budget cycle in terms of what it is that we're looking at. And I say the budget cycle, of course, because if possibly there's a budget implication, then you could consider that as a committee folding that into your fiscal year 24 budget. But by December of 2022, make a final decision on changes to the start times that would then go into effect for the fall of 23. So we have, obviously, our folks here to answer some questions. I can appreciate that there's maybe great disappointment with this in terms of a timeline. Know that I'm supportive of a change. I think we need to have a change. I think we're not doing right by our kids right now with our start times, but putting this off for a year seems to make some sense right now.
Thank you.
I would like to say I've been 100% support in certainly changing start times. I would like, as opposed to as we proceed, and I totally support your position in vetting out these different areas of concern before pulling the trigger and trying to get it all done in a very short amount of time, with adjustments needing, for adjustments that are impacting everybody. Maybe in this process, as you review the bus piece, as well as others, is that my concern still lies with the west side of the town, with Shaw Street in the west. There are two schools whose students are going to be impacted mostly, and it's not. And granted, I absolutely understand not everyone. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but it seems that they carry the brunt of these unfortunates piece more than any of the other schools, and that in itself, especially at this time in society, they need that downtime. They need that ability to go out and play before dinner, before homework, and we're limiting that, and that concerns me. And we know that play is one of the most instrumental and primitive way of learning, and taking that away from them, even to participate in extracurricular sports, there seems to be an equity issue, and I think it's a source of additional stress. I would like, in some way, I'm not looking for a perfect solution, but I just don't feel comfortable moving ahead with something that we know we need, if it's going to be so detrimental to school students, schools and those students. And I just have, hopefully that maybe in that conversation, in that discovery piece, because I really do think it's a discovery piece and those concerns that is also considered should other scenarios present itself, because not to say that any one of these three scenarios were overwhelmingly agreed upon, doesn't offer more confidence for me with that concern either. So I just wanted to point that out.
I understand where your recommendation is coming from completely. My key question coming out of that, obviously cares and how we look to that in the future and how we accommodate the importance of that to people. But from the transportation perspective, there's two sides to it, the way I think I understand it. One is the level of commitment from families. This is what we're going to do so you can plan in the best possible way. And then if we could get truer, clearer commitments from families so you had better numbers to work from, is there a different mix of sizes of buses or something we could do approximately within the budget? Or what's the next step more, with a little bit more, we could do something much, much more beneficial for the schools where we could have closer alignment of the school start times if we were using 20-seat buses instead of the full-size buses or whatever, some mix of buses. So I guess the two questions are, how could we help with the commitment piece from parents of this is what we're going to do with our child every day so you don't have to plan for 40 when you get 6. And then on the other side, is there flexibility from the company that we hire for different sizes of buses so we don't have buses that are largely empty on some of their runs where we could maybe have a balance of the size of the buses? Is that something that we could find out what is needed for information first within the schedule that's proposed, and then what are the options? And maybe there's one that's close to no change in cost and one that's what's the next step more. Obviously, we're not going to go back and ask for triple the budget or whatever, but is there a small step more? We could have a really better list of options that might present from just an incremental change as opposed to a massive one.
In response to that, and off the top of my head, a change in bus size isn't going to have any sort of impact, in my opinion, on the budget, because we won't be downsizing to minivans. That's not realistic. But even if we go with a half bus, a 20-seater bus, I don't think, based on registrations, that any particular route could run with a minibus, and I don't know that it's going to have a big enough impact on the budget that, we're going to need more so we can run more tiers. So I don't know that that's really effective. In my opinion, what could be effective is right now we have students registered for the bus that aren't necessarily using it. Parents sign up just in case they need it. So how do we eliminate that group? And one way to eliminate it, the parents don't truly need it but may want it, is to, in my opinion, to charge for the bus, because if it's not needed, they're not going to pay for it. And that's going to make us have more realistic numbers. It's an unfortunate resolution, but it's the only one that I can come up with to give us very, very realistic numbers on who needs and who actually doesn't. With charging for the vehicles, we're not going to see the families that don't truly need it utilizing it or signing up for it.
It's very helpful.
Good information, yes. Thank you.
So I'll just, hopefully I can tidy this up for some of us, but I think that, so as I've been processing this over the past couple of weeks, I've kind of gone through like a continuum of feelings of being like angry. Like, I don't care what anyone says, I'm still gonna change it. Like it's sort of like you're going through this process, and then I think I was talking with David today earlier, and I sort of kind of had this like moment of part of the work, the work has not been wasted, it's been setting a foundation for maybe bigger changes that we may need to make. That we try to do this work within the confines of what exists now. And the work was not done with what could we do? What could we do if? Or what could we do if we spent more money on buses? What could we do if we charged fees for buses? And I think we tried to do the work and we kept it tight like that and didn't think beyond what could be. And I think that now seeing that clearly that didn't work, because there's not one scenario that is making anybody feel like this is a direction to move in, for numbers of reasons that I will not repeat because we've all been living this for the past month. So I think we know CARES is essential and important. We know that we need to be able to provide that for families. We know that there's a ridership, I don't know what to call it, a dilemma. There's something there that needs investigating. We can get better at that. And, you know, I'll tell you, years and years ago, I remember coming to some kind of a calendar meeting of the school committee. I mean, I think it was I'm going back like, I don't even know, 10 years. I was not on the school committee. And one of the school committee members said, you know, and our buses are half full, and I want to know how many. And I'm like, we're literally, like all these years later, I'm sitting here going, I can't believe we haven't actually solved this yet. So maybe this is the thing that makes us have to. We've laid this foundation. Everybody is aware of what's going on in the community. They all know we so desperately need a change in start times. But for us to do that now, and obviously Glenn's recommendation, but it probably would not be possible, right? We're not really doing that in the best interest of all kids and all families. But I don't think it's been wasted. I think we've set this foundation. We've said, okay, we're going to need to do some bigger changes. I would recommend that I know there's not going to be another start time committee, but I think there's got to be a smaller subcommittee working on these things and really like diving into this so that we can come back with really, I think, what are going to be some tough decisions for us to make in order to make these improvements.
Okay, let's make one.
Yeah.
One of the other here is
Love
the
hearing
school
football.
committee policy. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I
legal
know.
requirements for transportation, and then there's school committee policy. I mean, that's one place to start. I mean, Lisa didn't say that, saying charging, but if the school committee policy changes,
Yep.
you know, and you go by, you know, legal guidelines or whatever, I think that'd have an impact as well.
Yep. I mean, to have the biggest impact with start time changes, right now we are running 4 tiers. We have kindergarten, elementary, and middle school and high school. If we could shrink that down and not have to do 3 tiers, that's how we reach our ideal situation, in my opinion, that I think will appease the community more. But in an effort to do that, we need very, without, you know, doubling the fleet size, we need to really explore accurate ridership. You know, all of the buses should be relatively full, not packed, not kids crowded, but all of the buses, according to our numbers, are relatively full, except for maybe ones that do far outskirts. And, you know, right now, we're not following our distancing guidelines set forth. And, you know, obviously my goal is to pick up every student we possibly can, but we can alleviate that pressure when, you know, we set that mile radius, or, you know, that you're a walker within, you know, reasonable distance from the school and a safe walking distance. So we could kind of explore, if we follow those guidelines, how can we get it down to we have 3 out times here?
That's helpful, thank you. Other questions or comments? David?
So I'll try to keep it quick, because I think it sounds like we're kind of in a similar place. I do find it very frustrating that after trying for so long to get this done, that we can't quite get it over the finish line, or in the end zone, or whatever sports metaphor you want to pick. But you know, however we got here, we're here, and we have to, you know, go forward and decide what makes the most sense from this point. And I think that we've, at least to my mind, the options that we've been left with right now are all somewhat unpalatable. And this is not the kind of change that I think we can make very often, so I don't want to choose one of them and then suddenly, oh, guess what? We're changing them again next year. I mean, it's, you know, chaos, pandemonium, rioting in the streets. We don't want any of this. So I am a little disappointed that I think we haven't been thinking a little bit more outside of the box this year, so that we were maybe could have been further along with some of these other potential options. My concern is that we'll be in the same position next year, and then we'll have just kind of taken another year not to get to a place that we like. But in the end, I think that and I agree with what Jen said about that. I think that maybe our community is prepared now a little bit, like within the confines of what our current system is and how the current policies work. This is the best we can come up with. And so if you want something better, then we're going to need to make some other types of changes. And so maybe I'm hoping that our community is kind of primed for some of those discussions and decisions that we may make that may ultimately put better options on the table.
For me, I felt like what MJ was saying around it's sort of like simply flipping the scale and really burdening other people just didn't settle well with me at all. You know, I don't think it's fair to have any child really being asked to sit and be ready for learning at 7:30 a.m. And on the flip side, I don't think it's fair to ask any working parent to drop their kid off at 9:15 in the morning. I feel like that is just putting such a burden on families, and I think that families and children are needing stability more than ever right now. So a thought process that I went through was on the heels of the pandemic with insurmountable amounts of change and requirements for adaptation and tolerance of burden. I just, I'm asking myself, like, is another significant change the right thing to do right now, given the sacrifices and burdens that this is going to place on other people? And then my other thought process that was really important to me in this was, if we are going to ask that of some people in the community, we would have to be gaining something, achieving some other goal. And for me, that was alignment for our professional development. And we are not going to achieve that unless, so we're not going to achieve that by bumping 20 minutes. And and I'm not willing to put the significant burden of that 9:15 start time on families to accomplish that. So I'm not in support of changing start times for now, but I do believe that this is really important, and I'm also not viewing this as like a waste of time at all. I'm looking at this as we now have a solid understanding of the needs of the community, and we know the problems have been really uncovered, and I think that, as Dr. Brand was saying, we have more work to do. So I know I've only been on the committee for a year, so I don't maybe have the same frustration as others who have been here longer and wanting this to have been achieved by now. But I'm looking at this as this has been a great use of time, and thank you so much for, the thought that you've put into this, and pause for all of their, significant effort. That's been really valuable, but I am in support of Dr. Brand's recommendation.
I'll just say, I think that I know we've been talking about this for a long time, but I'm not so sure that the community also feels the same way, that this has been talked about for a long time. And recently there was an interview, so I always liken this to when Boston, which is a much different system, tried to change start times a couple years ago. And there was a recent interview with Tommy Chang, who was a superintendent at the time, and he says, and they asked, what is the one big thing that you regret? And he regrets the start times and sort of the failure around that, because he said they tried it too fast. They did not involve the community in it. He says we should have, Boston, he says we should have done 3 to 5 years plan. I'm not suggesting that we do 3 to 5 years at all. It's a much different system.
It's been that.
But I think that it's a good way to think about this, is we need to make like these big, these big changes, and we can't rush into it. So I totally support sort of waiting. If we're in the same place in a year, and we've looked at bus ridership, and we've done a cost analysis on if we add a bus, 2 buses, 3 buses, if we've looked at how CARES can be adjusted, if we've done all of that stuff and we're still in the same place, then that's another conversation. But, you know, I think that we can't make a decision unless we've done all of these other things.
Do you want to add anything about CARES? No. A long time, so I just want to make sure.
Unless you
that
have questions.
I'll make a motion then.
Okay.
I move that the committee not make any changes to school start times for the 2022-2023 school year.
Is there a second, Mr. Fennelly? All in favor? All right. No.
Thank you very much.
But I really, I mean, I thank you. And I think I said, I really think we've started something good, and I know that's gonna be hard for some people, but I think that no one was getting what they wanted, so I don't think anyone tonight's gonna be sitting there going, I can't believe, I mean, 20 minutes.
Oh, just wait.
All right, 20 minutes would have been a little nicer, for sure. Like, it was like, I'll take the 20 minutes as a middle school parent, you know, but I think in the end, we have to think about what's best for everybody, and clearly there was just no front runner. Thank you for your time, and I'm so sorry that you're here so very late, and all the work you've put into this, and the start time committee, and pause, and the leadership team, I just can't thank you enough, and unfortunately, there's still more to come, so we'll be working closely together throughout the next year, and
This work
hopefully,
hasn't been wasted, it's just not done.
it's just not done.
Yeah, no,
To be
exactly.
continued. But thank you for being here, we really do appreciate
Thank you for having us.
this,
Very
and then
much.
obviously all your
Thank
work
you.
for the district. All right, are there any subcommittee reports?
I would like to bring forth, in light of the recent tragedy that occurred yesterday in Uvalde, I would like permission from the board to send a condolence card to the school committee in Uvalde, Texas, on behalf of us, just to let them know where we stand with them, and that we, you know, just terribly sorry for the tragedy, you know. I wrote something, but I don't know if this is something you want me to read. I could.
Is this okay with everybody, or does anyone have some?
I think it's a lovely gesture, and I would support it.
Thank you, I support
All
that.
right, great, thank you. You can read what I wrote and sign your names, that would be great, and we'll send it out. Thank you so much, appreciate your consideration.
Are there any other subcommittee reports?
This, not exactly a subcommittee report, and it's been mentioned briefly before, but I would like to mention the special event that took place Friday. So the music program took the middle school band, chorus, and strings students to the Great East Music Festival hosted by Palmer High School. The group included over 220 students, 6 staff, and 33 chaperones. I was one of those, so that's why this is firsthand knowledge. The Great East Music Festival is an adjudicated event. That is, the performances are judged to provide feedback to the students and to help them grow as musicians. The judges were very impressed with Wilmington, the Wilmington groups, in particular based on the number of students and the quality of the performances. They said, I'm paraphrasing here, considering the impact of the pandemic on music programs in general, it is obvious that the 3 teachers did amazing work to keep the kids in the program and moving forward. This part is a direct quote. It is clear that the music program is alive and well in Wilmington. On a more amusing note, the host school set out risers for the chorus group. They were not expecting a group like Wilmington. The risers had room for 70 to 80 students. The Wilmington chorus had over 100. The judge said something to the effect of, you just kept coming and coming through the door. It was great. It was a great sight. The students did fantastic. And I especially want to mention that this district is clearly graced with 3 amazing teachers, Ms. Prindeville, Ms. Perkins, and Mr. Ferrara. Thank you also to Palmer High School for hosting it. It was a great day, and I want to thank them for thank the teachers for all they do for the students. It was fantastic.
Mr. Turner, I appreciate that. Are there any other sort of, kind of maybe subcommittee reports? This has become like, let's share news. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry.
It's really not a subcommittee report at
Oh
all.
my,
but
what is happening?
I'm sorry, I cannot let, I should have mentioned it at the last meeting, because it happened before the last meeting, but I cannot let the Wilmington Art Show go unremarked upon at the school committee, which was, I believe, 2 weekends ago or 3 weekends ago. And as always, is just so fantastic. Not only just because the art on display is of such high quality and is just enjoyable to view, But the time and effort put into it by Wilmington's art teachers, the respect with which the students are treated as artists, just the, this is not just something that's just stapled up on the wall, that they really take care to frame the art and the medium that they're working in, and it's, I think it's just such a wonderful showcase for the talent of our district, and I couldn't let it go unremarked upon. And so I wanted to thank all the art teachers who made that possible, and of course all the students who created that all that wonderful art.
That's great, thank you.
This
Melissa?
this is also not a
Current
subcommittee
events.
report.
I'm gonna change this to just,
But
Sharing of
I
news.
would like, speaking of talent in the district, I had the pleasure of attending the National Honor Society induction last night at the high school, and I was there last year too, and it's just so moving to to witness all of the leadership of the students in this town, and to hear about their plans for next year and where they're going and what they're doing, and it's just impressive and amazing, and I was just so honored to be there last night to see that. So congratulations to all of them.
thank you very much. Anybody else have anything they've attended lately? Okay. And you already mentioned Chicago this past weekend, but, and I think just on this note, a lot of parents and families have been going into schools to see projects and speeches, and it's been all over social media. So I think that it's been great to see families getting back into the buildings and to feel kind of a part of the engagement. It's been exciting. So lots more to come. We have the Wilmington High School Scholarship Night, 6:30 p.m. on June 3rd. Graduation is scheduled for June 5th. If it rains, then we will have it on June 6th at 4 p.m. June 8th is our next regular session meeting at 7 p.m. As a reminder, we're going to actually recognize the retirees that evening, but we're going to start at 6 p.m. in the courtyard. So we were thinking about doing it after, but we've decided it makes much more sense to do it before. So we'll have some you want to trade some snacks, and Tracy's organized this party. So we'll meet out there, spend some time talking with them and celebrating them, and then we'll come back in here and formally recognize them before we continue on with what we're calling a shortened agenda, Tracy, right?
Which follows by an executive session.
Which is followed by an executive session. So
Semantics.
we'll try, it will definitely, we've tried, that's why this meeting is so long, because we put everything into this meeting. June 9th, we have the underclass awards night, and then June 17th is the last day of school. It is an early release day, and if there's no other news to share.
No correspondence either.
Correspondence, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, David, seconded by Mr. Smaha, all in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for your engagement tonight.